and gentlemen, the golden era is now upon us. For the next 2 hours or so, or how well my voice can hold up, you better be flying with us because this is going to be a show for the ages. In the 4 years I've been doing this on SportsWire Radio, this must be the most hyped, excited I've ever been. Why? Because not only do I have one co-host who was a legendary SJLI Golden Eagle, we've got another one, and he was one of my favorite players on the team last year. And I said this on numerous spots, not only with the Brute Force, but Coach Heenan, Coach Gordieso, and he was one of the key components as to why we won last year at the Max Stern Athletic Center, and maybe one of the biggest wins in the program's history in a long time. And he's going to tell us how we get maybe another big win at the Max Stern Athletic Center. So we're going to give both of our co-hosts introductions one by one. So with it, wait for it. Further ado here on the Sports Report, the number one global sports show, legendary alumni from our SJLI Golden Eagles men's basketball team. He's 26th all-time in school history and rebounds. He is the Brute Force, Brad Weiss. And last year, one of the captains on the legendary 2021-22 team. 12-4 in the Skyline Conference. 15 wins. Best regular season in over a decade. One of the key reasons why we got that very beloved win at the Max Stern Athletic Center. His name is from Smithtown, New York, Gordon Show. Gentlemen, how we doing tonight?
Oh, we got to be good after that intro, Tom. We got to be good now. I mean, we got to be ready to go by this time. I mean, there's enough on the line here.
You haven't got an intro like that in a while because you're so used to Friday nights. I don't usually have a voice by the time we open, usually also, to be fair, because usually some wrestler wants to beat me up. At least we're talking basketball. But obviously, Gordon, I want to go with you first because obviously it's a tremendous honor to have you here. And certainly I spoke about it a couple different times. I mentioned it in the promo. You won a game last year that I think put this team on the map and said, you know what? All right, SJLI, the Golden Eagles, yes, this is a team. This is a team that's for real. And to kind of set the tables for us to going into 8 o'clock at the Max Stern Athletic Center, talk about how you guys were able to pull off that win and kind of the mindset you were going into that environment, which the guys are going to be in once again tonight.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. Really appreciate you having me on the show.
Sure.
Long-time listener. The Golden Eagles podcast. So obviously the game last year was, probably my favorite memory on the basketball court. But yeah, I think, the biggest thing was St. Joe's hadn't really beaten Yeshiva in a really long time to that point. So we kind of had to show ourselves hey, these guys are, they're human, so to speak, right? Like they're not, think about the scene in Rocky IV, right? Where he cuts Drago and it's he's not a machine.
Yeah, I could think of that. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
They got obviously Ryan Terrell, G League player. I mean,
my God,
they've been the class of the conference for quite a long time.
Yeah, 4 or 5 years at least. Yep.
Yeah, for sure. So I think for us, we just had to go in there and just believe in ourselves. We obviously had stacked up a lot of wins to that point already. So I think we just had to build off that. I think we had to just play our game, do what we do best and not let Yeshiva kind of dictate what we do. They have a unique style, and I think we had to make sure that we played our game and not succumb to what they do. But also I think, part of it was just enjoy it too. When you go in there, Saturday night, end of the season. I mean, it's a big time.
30 game. Yeah, it doesn't feel like a D3 gym when you go there. It feels like you played at Lebanon, so you played at some big places, but that feels literally like a D1 type of place.
It's a small gym, so they pack it out and it's loud and people are into it and they're cranking the Jewish warm-up music and you don't know where you are, but it's fun.
You could be in Moscow for all you know, like in Rocky IV almost.
No, listen, I was trying to look for the playlist, couldn't find it on Spotify. Worked for us pretty well, but it's an incredible environment. So I think also just enjoying the moment and hey, obviously we were able to pull off a great win, and again, one of the great moments I've ever been a part of.
Oh, no question. I mean, they were nationally ranked. They were, I think, #1 in the country at one point early in the year.
Yeah.
I know Brad, I spoke with some of the guys off the air after the win. There was guys like Chris Niblock and Matt Weeks, and obviously, Billy played for the team as well, Coach Heenan, and a lot of guys were proud. But before I get to Brad, I mean, were you nervous going into that environment? You walk into that gym, and I know you've played at different places. I know you were at Stony Brook and different stuff, but, like, were you nervous going into that gym?
Not really. I mean, the good news is like we had clinched playoffs already. We actually clinched it earlier that day by virtue of someone else losing. So we were kind of in it already. We kind of like got into the playoffs. Now it's just a matter of like seeding. But we didn't really wasn't super nervous. Like in a way, it's kind of like, house money. Like we're not supposed to beat Yeshiva. Like St. Joe's is a school full of guys. Our whole team are guys from Long Island and one guy from Queens, Basir.
Yeah.
We don't have dorms. Like we're all commuters. We don't Yeshiva's recruiting globally and good for them. Right. But
sure.
we're playing these guys from all over the country, some all over the world. And we're a bunch of guys from Long Island, and a bunch of guys who really were first year college basketball players, so
I know, because they lost COVID, because you guys lost the COVID.
Exactly.
Year, so.
So really kind of went with house money, no pressure, just go out there, have fun, and play our game. We gave them a good game the first time around, earlier in the season, and I think we felt like
it was a Sunday afternoon game, and I think you guys in the first half had the lead. Then all of a sudden, I think it was just the bomb squad. They hit 3 after 3 after 3, and it was yeah, pretty much. I think Brad and I remember messaging you on Instagram, because I don't think you were watching the game. I think you might have been watching the Jet game at the time, because I like the nerd I was. I think so. I'm almost certain of it. And I said, boy, we had the lead. I look up, we're down 17.
No, yeah. So we played them tough that first time around, but we were a lot better team since then. So I think we felt like we had a good shot at it the second time around.
Okay, all right. So let me get to a couple of comments here first, and let me get to a few shots. First, I want to give a big shout out to a woman listening all the way in the state of California who tells me she's a Golden Eagles fan, Anastasia Riznia. So she's listening to us out there in California. Big shout out to her. Also want to give a shout out to my guest tomorrow night, Skulls, who tells me I need a bottle of water. Well, I have a big gulp, so that's going to be close enough. I need to sip, because I don't sleep much these days. But he says the funny thing that happened when I played basketball was being traded against the team I was playing against, and no one knew anything about it. Interesting. Brad, I want to talk about it, obviously. Let's go back into the pregame, obviously, coming here to 8 o'clock. Gordon gave us the story about last year, and we'll bounce around with both years, this year and such with last year. But, I mean, going into it, now, you also had a similar story. Not you didn't win like Gordon, but in that 2020 last game of your career, you were in that environment when Yeshiva was, I would say, maybe even more of their peak when Gordon faced him. So, the guys right now, I mean, you'd obviously be one of the veteran players. You were a senior at that moment. What are you telling those guys? I mean, do you feel like almost, Brad, if you were in that locker room, and maybe Gordon can answer this afterwards, because you've been there a couple times, you've got a couple of wins under your belt, you're not rattled by them, you're not rattled by the nerves. I mean, what's your mindset going into a game like this tonight?
Yeah, so first of all, Gordon, thanks for coming on. Excellent to see another Golden Eagle on this show.
About time. We've asked Chris Niblock 50 times, and he's doing batting practice with his kids. I mean, God bless him, but
Listen, he's a grown man. But listen,
understood.
When it comes to your question, Tom, first of all, you got to embrace the environment. That's number one. A playoff game is obviously something with more on it. And listen. It's fun. And first of all, I got to say this about the Max Stern Athletic Center. It was one of my favorite places to play.
You said that many times, by the way.
Yeah, and again, it's not the prettiest place, not the biggest place, not the most incredible, accommodations when the locker room is the size of our locker room at St. Joe's. I mean, it's really
the John Jay gyms, by the way. I don't know if you know this. The John Jay gyms weren't in their bathrooms were not too good either. Their locker rooms. Now they upgraded it. But,
there's nothing special about it. I'm not knocking the Max Stern Athletic Center.
All right. Well, make sure.
But there's something special about that place. I mean, it's just something you go in there, the fans are so passionate. And those are the games, too, you want to be in. You want to be in a game with fans rooting. Even if it's against you, it gives you some more motivation to do really well. And I think that for our guys, we always had good battles with them there. We never won. But, Gordon's team, they went in there. They embraced the environment. They embraced that pressure that comes with playing there. And they got the job done. And then they did it again this year. So I think that the team, listen, they know what they're getting themselves into. They know what the environment's about. They know the fans are going to come out because, boy, does Yeshiva show up. And their fans show up. And they go crazy for their team, which, for me is awesome. Even as the visitor, right? It's just cool to see a fan base come out and support your team like that, especially at the Division III level. But listen, you got to embrace the environment. You know what's coming. You know that, everybody's going to be cheering for the other team for the most part. You might have a small section for yours. All right, but everybody's going to be cheering for the other team. But you got to focus on what you need to do. I mean, if you think too much into it, you're going to crumble. But I think what Gordon said earlier about how the guys went in there with confidence, right? They were focused on what they needed to do and they got the job done. That's really all these Golden Eagles got to do. They know how to beat Yeshiva. They've had two good games against them. I know in the second half of the second game, they had a tough 54-point quarter they let up. But I think that they're going to rebound off that. They have a great coaching staff, great team. And listen, they've built some nice wins and some momentum going into the playoffs as well. All of that plays a factor, and I do think this is going to be an awesome matchup. But, again, the Maxter Athletic Center, it's a fun place to play, and I think these guys are looking forward to it. A lot of people would say I'm a little nervous about playing in the playoffs. I think that's a place where you go in and you're ready to have some fun. That's a fun place to play.
Yeah, I kind of feel like once you kind of get on that court and maybe the guys are there now, it's almost like, okay, all that stuff, whether it's the commute, whether it's everything else, you kind of go and kind of like forget all that. And I want to give a shout out to somebody else who's tuned in, the resident rock star, Sean Jovi from the state of Wisconsin. And Skulls also wants to tell me my high school won state championship 2 years in a row from 04 to 06. All right, very nice. Well, listen, that's more wins than I got. But Gordon, I want to ask you a question, and maybe this will be kind of the mindset the guys are in tonight, and we'll talk about kind of the key players in a second. You play with a bunch of them, Brad. We've covered them. Did you feel like, Gordon, that there was a responsibility because you were kind of like the guy that had maybe the most Letterman, you might want to say, the experience to kind of like say, all right, you know what? Don't worry about it. Let's just stay focused, stay on court. I mean, I know Matt Hurd had played there before. He was a veteran. Brad, your old teammate, Mark Roberts Jr., had been there also and played. But I kind of felt it was you, Gordon, Matt Hurd, and O'Halloran, Kevin O'Halloran at the time. Maybe were the three guys that kind of had to keep everybody kind of like composed and kind of like step up. You were obviously a little more talkative, I'd say, maybe than a Kevin O'Halloran as an example, had a little bit more, I think, experience than even a Matt Hurd. Did you feel, Gordon, the responsibility going into the locker room before the game would start to kind of like maybe speak to the team or say something to kind of like get the guys fired up?
Yeah, I think that was like a role I kind of played all year long, not just even the Yeshiva game. Like, I think Kevin is the oldest by age. We call him.
Yeah, well, we've joked about that quite a bit.
I had the most like years experience like in college basketball. So I think I kind of, I don't know if it was like just like I did it. I think it just kind of naturally happened. I kind of became the voice that we kind of went to like leadership wise and like, in addition to Matt and Kevin and all those guys. But yeah, I think I tried to be vocal where necessary, not be like over the top and like constantly, just talking for the sake of talking. But like, I think I would try to be like a calming presence. And I think that's kind of the role that kind of developed for me over the course of the year. Like, beginning of the year, still trying to figure things out. I think it just kind of evolved into me sort of being the elder statesman, if you will, out there, and kind of the guys kind of keeping everybody on the same page and just keep them like together, confident, try to control the pace of the game. And I think I really did. I felt responsibility for that. And, listen, we forget last year, like we were a super young team, like
I know you guys really, honestly, the only veterans really on that team, I would say you, Matt Herder played a little bit there, and Kevin O'Halloran. Mark Roberts was on the team, but he didn't really have as much experience, and not to not Mark, but he didn't have the experience that I would say, frankly, you, O'Halloran, and I would throw in Matt, because Matt was on the team for a couple years. So I would say, everybody else. McNeely was a rookie. I mean, Malloy didn't play during the COVID year. I mean, Gordiello had experience, but he didn't have as much as you guys. I mean, we could go down the list of the players that were on last year's team and this year's team. Timmy Hurt, another example. I mean, most of that team had an average 1 year of college basketball experience, if that, other than you three guys?
Yeah, not even. It was pretty much zero, like across the board. And like, even the guys who were, veterans on the team really hadn't like accrued a lot of minutes on the court.
Right. Mark Roberts was the example of that.
Right, exactly. So, I think it did kind of become me sort of being one of the voices, or maybe like the most like steady voice to just kind of keep everybody on the same page. And I mean, look, by that point in the season last year, we had been through a lot already, and we'd kind of weathered a lot of storms. And I think we had kind of built up a mentality throughout the year of like, it doesn't matter how bad things go, like throughout the game, like the kind of the peaks and the valleys of the game, like we feel like if we're in there at the end of the game, like we're gonna win. Like we had that mentality last year, and I think like that was really powerful for us. And that Yeshiva game is a perfect example. Like it gets tight at the end of the game. Yeshiva makes a run. I think the start of the second half.
Yep.
And we just like, the entire time we felt like, yeah, we can win this game. Like we belong here.
Yeah, it's funny you said that because I remember speaking with Brad when I was watching the game, and I think that you guys might have been only down maybe 3 or 4. It was in the second half, and then it was like, I want to say the last 9 minutes of that game, maybe even at the 8-minute mark, it was almost like they kind of like withered a little bit. I don't think they were used to playing a game the way you guys had played them. It was certainly offensively they were challenged. They struggled a bit. They didn't feel comfortable. Usually they were kind of in their element from the outside. You guys, I think, really did a good job with that. And I think that Brad, going into that, I mean, let's talk about some of the keys. Obviously, Gordon gave us that perspective, and I think that kind of matches what we had Gordy Esser on a couple times about what Gordon did for the team. And I felt, again, he was one of the reasons they won that game. Ryan McNeely and Matt Hurt were the other 2 reasons. But, I mean, going into this game right now, obviously we know the strength of the Golden Eagles, which Gordon will talk about in a second. 27th in the nation in defense. I mean, what this team has done defensively, really changing the identity of this team. You think about last year's team, we were a little bit more of a fast-paced offensive team. But, I mean, I would have to think here, the Brufors, the key for us in winning this game is to really kind of keep Yeshiva in check from the outside, because that was where we struggled going back to the game a couple of weeks ago at Danzy, where they scored the 54 points, and they were just getting 3 after 3 after 3. So, I mean, talk about the defense, how that's going to be a key for us, and maybe if we can, to be successful tonight, to kind of limit their offensive looks from 3-point range.
Yeah, well, it's certainly the clash of 2 powers for sure, because you got the strongest field goal percentage team in Yeshiva, who shoots at the highest field goal percentage, and you have the team that holds the other team to the least amount of field goal percentage.
I know.
So you got the clash of 2 different worlds. But listen, yeah, I mean, you go down the list of Yeshiva players, and they all obviously can shoot from the perimeter. Led by Zvi, obviously, who's a very good player, obviously averaging 22 a game. So they have to contain the 3-point line, which I think they've done a good job of for almost 3 halves. I mean, you talk about the first game where they did a good job for 2 halves, and then
they did a great job
where they did in the first half, and then the second half it kind of imploded, and they didn't really, kind of lost track of the shooters. Had some tough possessions, so that's obviously always an important key with Yeshiva. But it's not as easy as you think, because you talk about we were talking about robotic players and stuff like that in the past. I mean, these guys are like, they know when to go back door, they know when to make the cut, they know when to come off. It's so hard to guard them. I mean, it's crazy. You go against the different players in the Skyline, right? And you have teams that are just quick and athletic and just skilled at the rim, and then you got Yeshiva, and you're like, these guys really supposed to be the toughest team to guard? They really are, though, because they just move so well. They run their offense so efficiently, and it's just so hard to keep your track. So there are going to be moments in this game where they're going to make a shot, they're going to make a good play. But I think for St. Joe's, the key is to get over that play and move on. Because if you let it accumulate, if you let it go on a 10-0 run, you let them get hot for a second.
Which is what happened in the second half. Which
right.
Talking about at Danzy.
That's the important part, because they're going to make shots. They're a good team. They're going to get an open look. They're going to make a contested shot. Okay, but it's about limiting the big runs or the big momentum changers in the game. And I think that St. Joe's has done a good job of that for the most part, but they have to do it for 2 halves today. And again, not let Yeshiva get that momentum where they're making shot after shot after shot. Instead, they make one, move on to the next possession, you got to stop the next one. Because again, that's what happens in the playoffs, and that's exactly what happened to me a few days ago against Port Washington in the high school playoffs, because we couldn't stop the one kid from getting momentum, and they blew us out. So that is going to be the key today, and obviously we'll talk more about their key players in a second. But the philosophy overall has to be, as many times as you can, run them off the 3-point line, make sure they stay in front of you as well, okay? And also, right, put pressure on them on defense as well, because defensively, they're not the strongest team.
No.
And I'll say one more thing. Tom, you mentioned this last week. win the rebounding battle is going to be important too, because they're not the best rebounding team. That's a way to take advantage as well.
Yeah, they're actually, which was surprising, which I kind of thought in watching them quite a bit throughout the season, they're more at the sort of the lower to middle of the pack in rebounds in the Skyline Conference, which I think is going to be a big note because we got two great rebounders on our team, in Xavier Allen and Spencer Blaine. But, Gordon, it's so interesting that the Brute Force talks about that, and I was speaking with Coach Willis, who's going to come on here in about 40 minutes or so, and I was saying, one of the problems I think you have with Yeshiva is the three-point range, and I think we struggled a little bit when it came to even guarding them, or even in the Brooklyn games, was the three-point range. So obviously, Gordon, you were one of those guys that had to deal with like an Oren Beedish or a Zevi Salmon. I mean, you'd be the guy that would be in charge of them. So I mean, what do you do here to be able to limit these guys? I mean, listen, they've got one guy in that Oren Beedish leads the nation in three-point percent. We're talking 52%, right? I mean, that means he's almost automatic. I mean, Zevi Salmon's right up there. He's not too far behind, 41% from three. On top of that, being the conference's leading scorer. So you were the guy that was unfortunately charged with the task of guarding these players. What do you do here in order for us to be successful?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing, right, it's communication, like between like the guys in the court, right? Like you got to talk through everything, because they set a lot of screens. They set a lot of those, like, really physical, tough screens they got to get around. And, you really got to be like all on the same page and kind of like be on a string, so to speak, all five guys in the court. You also, like, you can't ever take like a moment's rest, like when you're playing them defensively. Like you always got to be like wired, like at all times, like, head on a swivel. You can't relax for a second, because like Brad mentioned, they're constantly moving backdoor, they'll curl, they'll do a whole bunch of stuff. But I have no doubt that, AJ and they probably have something up their sleeve, like with a strategy for tonight.
Don't tell us if you know it. Don't tell us that strategy.
I'm absolutely not. No, I'm sure they have a plan tonight. Obviously, you gotta key in on the two guys. I think it's Badesh and Samet, right? Are the two?
That's the guys we're speaking about. Yeah, Badesh 52%, which is funny because I knew he was a good three-point shooter in watching them, whether it was against Brooklyn, SJ Brooklyn, or of course us, obviously Danzy and the Max Stern setup. But I didn't realize he was like that good from three.
Yeah, he's got a pretty pure stroke. Yeah, so you obviously got to key in on those two guys. But yeah, you just really got to be all on the same page, and you can never relax like for a moment. And that's why they're tough to play, because you cannot. Like other teams, you can kind of like, ball gets swung and, you step and help and like you kind of like take a deep breath and you chill. You can't do that with them. So you got to be locked in for 40 minutes.
Yeah, no, and I want to add one thing quickly, because I like Gordon's point a lot. And listen, yeah, because they're the team, like literally if you come out of your stance, they're gone. Like, it's one of those things where it's tough. But the one thing that, Gordon's team and the team this year has, what we really struggled with when I was playing was depth, right? Because when you have depth and you're able to get guys in and out, right, guys are coming in ready to play that hard defense and ready to. One thing I remember is that when after those Yeshiva games, I was exhausted. I mean, I was going to say, I was exhausted.
You had to stay on the court, though. You had to stay until you fouled out.
And listen, it was rough, guarding like a Gabe Leifer, and like he's moving everywhere, he's hitting threes, he's physical, and even like what's his name, the assistant coach now, that's Katz, who's now an assistant, and he's not fleet of foot, but this guy, I mean, setting screens, back doors, all over the place, making passes. I mean, these guys are really difficult to guard, and again, that is such an important point that Gordon made. If you take a second off on defense against them, or if you don't talk at all, they're going to make you pay every time. It's really hard to guard. But, again, when you have depth and you're able to get guys in and out and you're confident in what you have coming off the bench, that really helps, because you get the guys fresh and you have guys come in and really battle, and then the guys come right back in. We didn't have that, and we did struggle with that through some of my years. But, again, that's something that the team has this year. I know we're going to talk about in a second.
We are definitely going to do that, and I think depth's going to be the big key, and we'll do that here. And we are on Sports Wire. I just want to let everybody know we are here with the Brute Force, Brad Weiss, Gordon Scheuer, of course, who was a key part of last year's team, which had 15 wins, best regular season in over a decade, also won at Yeshiva. Really one of the biggest programs wins, I would say, in just about over a decade or so. Maybe 2015 when we got to the Skyline Finals, but it's been that long, and it is an honor to have Gordon on. And everybody follow Gordon on Instagram at Gordon_Scheuer05. The Brute Force is at BWeiss20 on Instagram as well, and also SJLI_MBB. Please follow the team. Also, want to give everybody the Skyline Conference playoff schedule, because I want to thank the Skyline Conference for for sharing some of our videos here. We have 7 o'clock kicking off Farmingdale and Mount St. Mary. Obviously, Farmingdale won the conference. I don't want to, really go down that road, but they did win the Skyline Conference this season. It's going to be the 1-8 matchup there in Farmingdale. We're also going to have Merchant Marine and Maritime 4-5 matchup, 7 p.m. Really, that might be one of the better games where you're going to see all throughout the week here. Also, Mount St. Vincent and Manhattanville 2-7 matchup, also 7 o'clock. Mount St. Vincent, the Brute Force, we saw them not too long ago, and that kind of ensured us to be in this spot. And obviously 8 o'clock, which I think, and I know most people think, the main event here, and of course, is the Golden Eagles and the Maccabees, the Max Stern Athletic Center. It is going to be a madhouse there in about 20 or so minutes. Now we'll also hear from Danny Burns for a little while. Danny will give his perspective on things, and obviously my name is the Reverend Tom Bryce. I am the man behind Sports Wire Radio. And, Gordon, Brad brings up a great point. Let's talk about depth because, one of the reasons I think that this team was successful the last 2 years, and obviously you were a big part of it, is depth. We heard Coach Gordiesso last year. We had Coach Heenan on as well. Mike McSloy I had on when he was first starting out with the team, and I really feel like that this team, almost unlike even Yeshiva or even Farmingdale or anybody else in this conference, to be frank, the depth that we have on this team. I mean, guys even like Nick Nemekis, Chris Connors, Tom Bell, certainly, Justin Turner, who's new to the team. These guys all can come in and provide big minutes. And I think Ryan McNeely off the bench, I think pound for pound might be one of the best 6 men in the entire conference. In fact, I think he was one of the other reasons why we won the game last year. And I think that that's what in playoff basketball, when you get into these games, is so crucial because not every minute Spencer Malloy is going to get those open looks. Xavier Allen is going to get double teamed. Matt Hurt's not going to get those fun threes that we love to see. And, having guys on the bench like a Timmy Hurt, Nick Nemekis, certainly Tom Bell, Justin Turner, Ryan McNeely, and among others. Gordon, talk about in a game like this how important the depth is and how that's going to hopefully give us an advantage here tonight.
Yeah, for sure. I think just looking at if not the deepest team, they're one of the deepest teams in the whole conference. You can go down the line, like everyone is a capable college basketball player. But I think for in playoff games, especially with the depth, it helps because one, if something's not working, if, God forbid, it's not going well with everybody else and you need to try somebody different, there's plenty of options where you can plug somebody in there and you can just play mix and match and see what's working the best. There's a lot of different options to go to. You can also be a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more physical because you have more bodies to rotate. Yeshiva plays, I think 7, 8 guys deep, if that most nights, whereas, St. Joe's I think is normally playing around 9, sometimes 10 guys.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
There's more bodies to throw at Yeshiva tonight. But also just I think in playoff games, there's also there's physical fatigue, but there's emotional fatigue as well. The emotions of the game are so big where it's draining and you need more bodies kind of rotating and keep people fresh. So I think the depth's a huge advantage for them. And yeah, like I said, I think there's a number of guys. I think every single guy on that team is a very capable college basketball player and a guy who can contribute. So yeah, I think depth's going to be a big factor in the game tonight. Hopefully a big advantage for them.
I think it is going to be a big advantage because what you said, we've heard from obviously when we had Coach Gordiesso come on, Coach G, as he's affectionately called. And that's the thing. Everybody on this team, even a guy like Brad, you play with Mark Roberts Jr., they're capable college basketball players. Nick Nemekis, of course, from Plainview. And Brad, you mentioned the depth, and I think that's where I do think there's a big difference between these two teams. Yeshiva, like Gordon correctly said, they're usually 7, if 8 guys, if that, especially even the game at the Danzy Center. And with this team, even a guy like Basir Hoyt at times in these 2 years has played some valuable minutes. Justin Turner, I felt, won us the game against Farmingdale at Danzy not too long ago. I think he scored 8 straight points at one point. So I kind of think here, Brad, that our advantage here tonight is that it's going to be the depth because we can mix and match. And one of the other reasons that I think that the depth is going to be a big issue because he came back last Saturday, and I think he's almost in a way the stir that straws the drink. I almost feel like in a lot of ways, he's almost one of my favorite players to watch out there. And I am talking about Liam the Rejector Sheehy, as I famously call him, because this guy, when he's out there, the guy is all over the place. He's almost literally like a platypus man, as they would call him. He's got arms all over the place. He can just block. He can rebound. He's even fun when he grabs the ball. I think here when it comes to depth, Brad, because that's the position that you kind of played a little bit here, I think very well he might be the X factor here because if you put Malloy and him at the same time, I don't think Yeshiva can match up with these guys. And talk about that depth part. And I think, especially here, a big factor, I think, as to why I'm confident tonight is the return of Liam, the Rejecter, She.
Oh yeah. So first of all, Gordon, you know that Tom was like, you were his favorite last year, and for sure this year,
were.
all right, Liam Sheehy by far is his favorite. All right, and listen, very well deserving though, because
he had 6 blocks in the game, bro. He had 6 blocks and 5 in
Oh,
another
listen,
one.
I love Liam too. I mean, he's a fun guy. I got to meet him as well, so he's a great guy. But with that being said, I'm actually going to get into it because I think he's absolutely huge tonight. Because I'm going to say a few things. Because one of my keys, actually, which I haven't went over, we talked about containing the 3-point line.
Yes.
That was one of them. One of the other keys was bench production and scoring. Because if you look at the 2 games, right, in Yeshiva played St. Joe's, right, the first game they had 20 points off the bench. Most of it coming from McNeely, but a lot of it coming from other guys as well. In the last game they played, they only had 8 points off the bench. And Yeshiva did a good job of containing the guys who came off the bench. The other thing I wanted to mention, Tom, is it's not just about scoring. Notice I used the word production because, right, the scoring was there in the first game, but the big number, Tom Bryce, 15 rebounds from Liam Sheehy in the first game.
Yep.
All right, that's a big number, okay? Like 3 or 4 block shots. That is a big number, okay? So those are things that are productive coming off the bench, right? And again, it doesn't have to be scoring, but it could be rebounding, which I said was an important thing today that we can have an advantage.
Absolutely.
Here. Like Liam getting those big rebounds, gave us those outlet passes to some easy shots, right, in the first game. And also rim protection. You want to get them off the 3-point line, well, you got to have somebody to protect the rim.
And you know what? I've even noticed Liam, he actually will go up and put his hand up even at the 3-point line. If you were watching the game a little bit against Brooklyn, he was doing that. So Liam's the kind of guy that what I like about him most is he's not afraid to come outside. He's not afraid to kind of get in the guy's face. And I think that adds such an element to this team. And Gordon, we loved the team last year, but you guys didn't have that. He's almost in a way is him and Spencer at times are almost like a mini Twin Towers almost.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned Spencer, too, who also does a great job protecting the rim and has a lot of
the conference and rebounds, yep.
So, those two, and I'll add one more name that you might see tonight. How about Timmy Hurd? Another guy, right, who's just a strong kid, protects the rim, right, does a good job guarding in and out. So I think that's another name to look for tonight, not just for the scoring. Again, it's not all about the scoring. They're going to get scoring from their guys who we'll talk about later, and they'll get some bench scoring. But those little things like defense, rebounding, intimidating shots, making them take tough shots, that's going to be a difference maker. And finally, Tom Bryce, your guy, the rejecter, not only rejecting shots, all right, but also getting big rebounds. I could see him going for another double-digit rebound game, and that'll be huge for the Golden Eagles. Absolutely,
and I think that the positive was he came in. He played about 15 minutes on Saturday's game, but he was all over the place. He had some big rebounds. He had a block shot. He kind of led, I think, in a lot of ways to other guys getting involved in the block shots, like a Xavier Allen and a Spencer Malloy. And I have a fun question for you, Gordon. I mean, what nickname do you like better, the Brute Force or the Rejecter? I almost have to put you on the spot there.
Myself, you're saying like which one I like? I think the Brute Force is iconic. At least
it's been around for a while. It's been around for a while.
Locker room, I can tell you the Brute Force is an iconic nickname. So I would have
really
in the locker room.
With the Brute
really
Force.
no. I know. You know what? This is a great segue because Gordon, boy, you really are on target tonight. You almost remind me of one of my wrestlers that comes on. But apparently I hear now from a little birdie out there, and I don't want to say who and who else that's told me about this, but apparently it is my understanding that you actually do a rather decent impersonation of the Brute Force, Brad Weiss, and certainly, I don't know if I want to put you on the spot there, but I figure while we have a few minutes, you want to share why that impersonation is so good and why so many people out there are dying to hear it?
So actually, it's really a tandem. It's actually a Tom Bryce and a Brad Weiss impersonation. They kind of go together, actually.
Okay.
I
don't know if you could do my number one intro, though. I don't know if you can do the intro. I don't know if you got the pipes.
No, it was just something like we started doing. Obviously, again, like we see the videos and on Instagram and everything, and
sure,
kind of just started doing it in the locker room, and it just became like a thing. I just happened to be particularly good at it. It's like a weird talent. I don't know. But
Well, you know what? Listen, I mean, I know at this point, you guys have listened to us so much over the past couple years that it almost becomes second nature. So, I mean, certainly, I appreciate that. You certainly have done that and spent the time on it. In addition to being a student athlete and a college basketball player, good ones at both, by the way. You were able to find some time on that. So I won't put you on the spot and do an impersonation unless you want to. But certainly, we can always come back to that when coach. What's that?
First of you. It's up to you. So
Oh, I mean, I'm
You don't
sure.
want to hear this? Oh, come on now.
No,
Now I'm into
I
this.
said it's up to
Oh,
him.
yeah.
I said I think it. Well, floor is yours. I mean, I was just trying to be
listen,
nice
it's
to
up
lead
to
him
you.
on.
It's up to you.
Let's go for it. Let's
Come
go for
on,
it. Because
Gordon.
actually, I
Give
do
us
want to hear it.
How many? All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the brute force, Brad Weiss. Talk to me. What are your thoughts on the Golden Eagles today? Yeah, thanks, Tom. I think Gordon Choi is a key component for the team. He's blocking shots up there. Liam's a good buddy of mine. He's out there, grabbing rebounds all over the place. It reminds me a lot of myself from my days playing with the Golden Eagles.
Wow. Did you take? Listen, I gotta be honest. Did you take voice classes for this? I mean, like, how do you practice something like this?
I don't know. It's a talent. Like I said, I'm pretty good with impersonations. We would do
Wow, I'll tell you. Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, I'll tell you what. I mean, we gotta. I hope we have more pre-games coming up here for the next week because I could certainly have you take the floor.
Tom, I gotta ask a question though. Ask the question.
Ask the question.
I gotta ask a question. First of all, that was on point. That was excellent. All right, that's so on point about how Rob goes, how I go. But how did you guys use it in the locker room? Did you use it as like a funny thing to get you guys going or something? Or
That's a good one. That's a good one.
It became like dialogue just in the locker room. Just like we were walking around, I'd be like, "Ladies and gentlemen," I was walking around. I'd walk in there. The roof was Brad Weiss, and then someone else would jump in and
Oh my god, that's hilarious. Listen. First of all,
you know what they should do? I tell you what they should be doing right now. Well, here's what they should be doing to break the ice. What they should have did if somebody was smart, they should have had a tape recorder of Gordon doing this. They could have, because Gordon's not there now. They could have used that and just recycled it over and over.
That is awesome. But on a serious note, we appreciate you guys for your support. That's
absolutely. Awesome. No, listen, the guys, have been great. Even going back to the COVID before COVID and everything. Just with the program. Obviously, Coach McSloy when he was there, and Coach Heen and Coach Gordiesso, I knew when he was at CCNY, and obviously just everybody on the team, guys. Some of the holdovers like Matt Hurd, obviously Timmy Hurd, and we always really from the bottom of our hearts really thank you for all of that support.
We appreciate the coverage. We appreciate the love.
Well, we love covering you guys, but let's try to dial it back down a bit because Brad wanted to talk about some of the other thing, which I kind of wanted to ask you, Gordon, on is, I thought one of the things that should be important is the first 5 or 10 minutes because you don't want to get blown out in a gym like this. In hockey, they always say, well, the first 5 minutes, you got to come out and be physical and do this. But I always felt like in college basketball, especially in a gym like this, where they have so many people and it's like times 10 to what you used to. Is that true, Gordon? You think like the first 5 or 10 minutes is important in this game? If you kind of say, you know what, I'm ahead, or if I'm right there with them, it kind of like gives you kind of like that confidence that almost like you're in a zone. I mean, is that fair to kind of ask that, and what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think the first 5 minutes of the game and the first 5 minutes of the second half are super duper important. I think the first 5 minutes, like you really set a tone, like just – in terms of like if you come out and you punch somebody in the mouth, like they're chasing you the rest of the game, right? So if someone comes out tonight and gets up, 10-2, the other team's gonna be chasing the rest of the night. And you got to climb that uphill battle the whole game. That's really tough. But at the same point, if you are the team that gets down in the first 5 minutes, it's also not the end of the world, right? Like it's 5 minutes, not the whole game, but it is. Plenty of games have been won and lost in those first 5 minutes of the first half and the second half. So it definitely is very important for sure.
Which is excellent you brought up because the second half, as Brad correctly pointed out the game in Danzy, the first 5 minutes, I think, lost us the game against Yeshiva. Even though we came back, we took the lead. There was a fluky possession when the shot clock was at like 1 second and they hit a 3-pointer and they wound up getting in the lead by double digits afterwards. We came back, but the point is that first 4 or 5 minutes in that second half at Danzy kind of totally changed the game. And conversely, I think the first game we played him at in Max Stern, I think we played pretty well the first 5 minutes and kind of set the tempo there. I mean, for you, Brad, I mean, is that important? I mean, I remember the game you played against them in 2020, your last game at the Max Stern Center. You guys actually played pretty well throughout that first half, and I would even say up until, I want to say it was about the 11-minute mark in that game. You guys were pretty much right there. I mean, is that kind of important for you too? I mean, take me back to when you played there and had that kind of success to hang in there against when they were, I think, probably at their peak.
Yeah, obviously it's important. I like how Gordon points out the second half, because I actually think the start of the second half is more important than the start of the game, because it just, again, it sets the tone. Normally in the first half, you go through those leaps and bounds. You go through your run, the other team's run, right? What plays they're running, what plays you're running. Obviously, with Yeshiva, they're not running plays. They're just running their offense, as you know. So nothing's changing there. But you kind of get a gauge of the game, the speed, all that. And then the second half, it's really about who's going to come out with that momentum to get ready for that push, right? And I think today, for today's specific game in the Skyline playoffs at the Max Stern Athletic Center, that point of the game is going to be crucial for our Golden Eagles. I think that, the momentum of the game, getting the crowd out of the game a little bit, right, in regards to, building some momentum, right? I think that's going to be a big point in today's game, the beginning of the second half, because I do think that, and again, in the first two matchups, the Golden Eagles have done a great job in the first half of containing Yeshiva, coming off the good starts, right, being in a close game. And it's been the second half that's been the difference. And Gordon knows it from last season in his game, right? It was an up and down game, but that second half, they made that push, right, and they won that game. So it's going to be very important today, specifically. It's always important to get off to a good start. But again, you can't just, they come out 10-2, they're in their home gym. All right, it's the end of the world. No, you got to make the next push. But again, for me, it's more about the second half. How you're going to start the second half, how you're going to come out of the locker room, right? You always got.
You're getting me nervous. You're talking about, we're down 10-2. It's not the end of the world.
Well, I'm not saying it's going to happen, Tom.
You just now listen. You know that the guys could certainly say, well, the brute force. What did you think about the? Because like Gordon said, well, they could say, well, Brad says, well, what if we get down 10-2 and then we have to come back?
Well, I'm just using it as an example. Obviously, you know what I want. All right, I want them to get up 10-2.
Well, yeah, duh.
Obviously, but listen, it's like you said, it's not the end of the world. Okay, as we said before, I mean, you come into the gym, they got the Jewish, music coming on it. Listen, a million
playlist, whatever.
But what's funny? Even on YouTube,
national anthems. I mean,
when you watch the game, even on YouTube, they had like 800 people at one point were watching their games. I mean, you're talking like it's a phenomenal thing. You watch some of these games and there's like 15, 20 people watching, which is still a lot of people, but they have like a national audience. And I want to bring our guest in a second. Before I do that, I want to give a couple of shout outs. I want to give a shout out to some friends around the world. Gail Kilmartin. I hope you're feeling better. I'm always praying for your family. She's out in the UK. She was watching us. Also, a good friend of mine, Billy Rupert, of course, who knows a lot about the game of high school basketball here on Staten Island. Of course, very dear friend of mine. BMD, my guest from tomorrow night's show. Obviously, I'll get with you later, and I want to bring on our guest now, a guy who knows a thing or two about tough environments. He's now a Hall of Famer, the only person to have ever played with his team played in the Final Four, and we're talking about a very dear friend of mine, and of course the legendary, now Hall of Famer, Danny Burns from our Brooklyn College men's basketball team. Of course, that famous 1982 team went to the Final Four, only team in CUNY history. And Danny, how you been? Congratulations! Since the last I spoke, you finally got into the Hall of Fame after we spoke about it for all those years.
Yes. First of all, I'm never gonna dislike you calling me a Hall of Famer. That's pretty cool. But
I'm sure when we speak again after the playoffs, when we have you on to have the formal interview, I'm sure we'll be quoting that left and right. You know that.
Yeah, but it's a team honor, and it was our team that really went in there. But
no question.
I like listening to the conversation that you guys were just having, with St. Joe's and Yeshiva. And I remember playing Yeshiva a couple of times. I mean, their community loves basketball and they love supporting it, and they have had some great teams and great players over the years, and it's pretty cool. I mean, what did they do? They split the series this year, right? Yeah,
the last 2 years, St. Joe's actually won the 2 games at the Max Stern Athletic Center, and it's a great segue to have you on here for a little while, because obviously I know you got you got interviews left and right about the Hall of Fame. You got the ceremonies to go to. I'm only goofing with you. But I mean, in terms of that, because you've played in maybe the biggest stage any of us could ever have an opportunity. You obviously win the tournament, go to the Final Four. Now, the guys have won a couple times in a row at the Max Turner Athletic Center, but it's playoff basketball. This is different. I mean, what are you saying in that locker room? How are you feeling going into an environment like this? I mean, what would be your overall kind of psyche going into here as we get closer to tip-off?
If I'm St. Joe's, you just got to talk about the last game, right? Because I think they did. St. Joe's won at home in February, but lost the first game in November.
So we won. Well, it was the reverse. We won in Max Stern, and we lost at Danzy. We were up 13-2 in Danzy. They had a run in the second half, and we came back, but they wound up winning by 9 at Danzy Yeshiva.
I'm sure both coaches are going to say, listen, let's play to our strengths. I'm sure that they game plan. You can't let Yeshiva, you got to run them off the 3-point line, because if you let them shoot from out there, we've been talking about that. I mean, more than 10 too. That's for sure. So you got to run them off the 3-point line. You got to make sure you rebound. I think the rebounds in the first game were tied at 33 apiece. I think the second game, I think it was 34-30. So whoever controls the boards, if you control the boards more than by 7 or 8, and then limit your turnovers, you got a good chance of pulling this win out. I mean, they have to play defense though. You can talk it, but if you're not in someone's face in this, both teams, St. Joe's in there, they're going to light it up.
That's actually a great segue, and I want to come back to that because we spoke about it, but I want to ask both guys this question, Gordon and the Brute Force, and I'll come back to you, Danny, with your thoughts on it, because obviously you were a defensive guy back on those great teams, and obviously you've coached the game as well. I mean, for you, Brad and Gordon, and I'll go with Gordon first, are you one of those guys that talks on the court, or maybe when it's a timeout, and you kind of say, hey, I see something, and maybe make an adjustment to kind of make that where you don't give them that open look as many times? I mean, both of you guys obviously could communicate well, but on the court in those moments, or maybe even in a huddle, or even in the locker room, I'll go with you, Gordon, first. Were you one of those guys that would maybe see something and try to tell somebody, hey, make that adjustment to what Danny was saying about kind of limiting them on where their strength's going to be, which is obviously the 3-point line?
Yeah, well, I think you have to talk. I mean, that's probably the biggest principle of defense, right? You got to be able to talk with all your guys. So yeah, I think as the game goes on, you get a better feel for the flow of it and what they're sort of doing. And I think it's important when you in timeouts, when you get in the locker room at halftime, that you go over it and you kind of talk about what you see. Even if you don't make any big adjustments, just talking it out sometimes and just mentioning, hey, I'm seeing, they're setting a down screen here. When they run this, they, whatever it is, right? It's just important to go over it and you talk through it, because then you're going to recognize it. You'll be able to identify it quicker when they run it, or you might be able to make a little adjustment. So yeah, I think you have to talk about it. Otherwise you're setting yourself up for failure. You got to be communicating with teammates. Maybe you'll bring it to your coach, whatever it may be. But yeah, talking is probably the most important aspect defensively.
And for you, Brad, I know obviously your biggest strength in your career was talking, certainly. I mean, that was probably bigger than your stats defensively. But I mean, I watched you. I did cover you. But I mean, were you one of those guys maybe in a huddle or in a locker room or in a timeout, if you saw something tonight, like Danny points out, which we all know we have to rebound the ball, but especially do a better job of defending the 3 against them? And Coach Willis, when he comes on in a little while, will certainly speak, I'm sure, a lot about that. And we'll get more of a deep dive in some of those players. But I mean, for you, Brad, were you kind of one of those talkers to maybe adjust something for one of your teammates who was going to have to defend that 3-pointer?
Oh, yeah. Well, like you said, I was pretty good at talking. They even put a poster up of me talking on the poster at the Danzy.
Danny, I know you got a Hall of Fame ring now, but I don't know if you got a poster yet. Brad's got a poster of him in Danzy.
I do, but listen, the Hall of Fame is so much better. Come on, stop it. But anyway, listen, yeah, I was the guy who talked a lot on the court. Off the court, when I was coming out of games, I always liked to interact with the guys that were on the bench because, it's a different view from when they're watching the game, especially for me, a guy like Jonah Caldwell who kind of played my same position. All right, what are you seeing that I'm not? Or something that, we're both working on, we're guarding the same guy, or our scout was kind of the same. So we're looking to see each other's view of the game. So I always like to talk to the guys on the bench, maybe who weren't playing as much, but were watching the game from a different view. And they gave me their perspective on what they were seeing. And sometimes I'm not seeing it because I'm in the game. And especially as a coach now, I've kind of learned how that goes a little bit, where I'm seeing things differently than I was when I was a player. So That's always important, but on the court communication is the only way that this Golden Eagles team is going to have any chance tonight. And we know they communicate because they're the best defensive team in the Skyline Conference. The numbers say it. So they have to communicate, and I know they're good at that. So they will. And ultimately, that will help them succeed tonight, in my opinion, right? And again, it's going to be important, but in the locker room, even as a coach, Tom, one of the things I like to do as a coach, right, is when the guys go to halftime locker rooms, I let them talk for a little bit. Okay, I don't just roar in there and start yelling, getting mad, or saying things. I like to let the team talk. Sometimes team dialogue is something that's really important in a game situation. And if it's bad, then you got to address it as a coach. If it's good, you let it happen. So ultimately, I think it's going to be important for the team to be on the same page communicating for the game. I wasn't necessarily the guy that talked during timeouts or anything like that. I let the coach do the talking for the most part. But I was the guy that was, very intrigued, obviously talking on the court. When I was coming off the bench, talking to the guys on the bench, and in the halftime locker room, definitely had a voice for sure. That's why I lose it so much, Tom, because I did too much.
Listen, well, you do lose it. But, Danny, that's a great point that the Brute Force had just made here. And I want to get your perspective on it. Obviously, knowing you a little bit, and you were on a team, obviously, that had a monumental run. If you think about it in local basketball, since that moment, it's only, St. John's, I think, locally, that even went to the Final Four. It's really very, very few teams. But, when it comes to the bench and the depth, that's obviously one key we spoke about was the depth, I think, of St. Joe's in terms of getting us hopefully over the finish line so we can have more pre- and post games with you, Danny. But in terms
let me just jump in real quick because I think Gordon and Brute Force, bring up 2 points.
Sure.
When you're when you're on offense and the defensive team is talking the whole time, and it doesn't matter what offense you're running. When they're talking about, okay, let's switch off, I got 2 on the baseline, see my help. When you're talking about fighting through the picks and stuff like that, and someone's saying, hey, calling out, no picks, it's just you and him. That's when the team defense communication is key. And I can tell you right now, our Brooklyn College team was tremendous with that, to the point where we were like a bunch of chatterbugs out on the defensive side. Offensively, the same way, but on defense, if you weren't talking, that's the way practices will run too. Because, like we talked about, the physicality of the defense in our practices were unbelievable to the point. A lot of times the whistle will blow to give like a 15-second timeout for the team because we were about to go at each other. That's how physical. And now I know the game's changed a little bit more, and for the better, speed and everything else. But the physicality of playing defense is still out there. Referees let things play, and you just gotta communicate and just fight through picks and stuff like that. Especially over the picks now and on these 3-point lines. These offenses are really good these days. How they make sure they get an open shot at the 3-point line.
I want to ask you one follow-up question. We'll come back to the guys here, Danny, because I was thinking about this because, again, you played at the highest stage anybody could possibly play. In a game like this, you spoke about you played at Yeshiva also. You played at the Max Stern Center a couple times like these guys did. And, would you be nervous going into an environment like this? Would you be kind of like, let's say, think about it like I always thought about first day of school, stomach jitters? Would you go into something like this? And Gordon was talking about it that he didn't really feel nervous at all, and kind of when he got on the court, it kind of got him the other way. And Brad kind of felt the same way. Going into an environment like this where the crowd is magnified probably times, I would say, realistically speaking, 100 people are at a college basketball game on a good day, and there's probably going to be 800. So we're talking about magnified times 10. Would you be going into something like this a little bit nervous, and how would that impact you?
No, I don't think the team. I think St. Joe's isn't going to be nervous going there. It gets the adrenaline, and you have to control your adrenaline because the crowd gets there. Once you're on the court and you're playing, I can tell you right now, you just hear your teammates and your coach. You zone everything else out. Once a timeout happens or there's a dead ball in a play, you can hear the crowd again. But once you're in the zone and you're playing, you can almost hear the sneakers squeaking on the floor.
I like hearing that, by the way. I have to say, when you guys all play, well, Danny, unfortunately, I wasn't didn't see you play, but when you guys played watching, I always like when the sneakers would squeal in the gym. For whatever reason, I would kind of like that. I don't know why, but just I always like that noise. It meant that you guys were playing. It meant that you guys, kind of to Danny's point though, the reason I liked it was because you were actually playing without the ball. You were kind of fighting to maybe block that outside shot, fighting maybe to prevent that screen, to give somebody that open look and to keep moving without the ball almost, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense. I mean, St. Joe, I mean, both teams are going to, they know each other. They know each other, how they played each other in the Skyline League. There's no surprises here today. It's just that who wants it more? Who's, and then the other thing is, it's like, it's not going to be a bad call that makes this thing. There's going to be possessions either way that, the referees are going to, make some good calls and some bad calls, and the crowd being into it. Every player loves going to a hostile environment to play, or you shouldn't even be on the court then. I mean, that's the fun thing about it.
Am I the only person that would have had nerves at all? So you would have had no nerves when you had
no. It's you get, what? Once you're with your teammates and everything, I don't think you really get that nervous, especially this time of year. The season's over. This is the playoffs. This is it. So you already got 25, 26 games under your belt already. So the kind of nerves and the play rotation of playing time and everything, that's already set. Unless someone broke in the lineup very late in the season, you kind of know where your roles are on the team already. And now it's just a matter of just reinforcing what the coach says. This is our game plan. We're not going to let this guy shoot. We're going to let somebody else win the game. And I'm sure St. Joe's coach is telling them exactly that. These two guys are not going to shoot at the three-point line. Make them run them off the three-point line, and then we all rebound. No one breaks until we get the ball. I don't know. Gordon, brute force, what do you think? Isn't that the way they say?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, yeah, I don't think the nerve. Listen, I think you have like some preemptive nerves maybe, but again, once you're out there on the court, like, you have a game plan. You've talked about it a bunch of times. Yeshiva and St. Joe's, they've played each other twice. There's no mysteries there, right? Like, I think the nerves go away pretty quickly. Like, it's pretty. I don't think you think about it too much, personally. But
for you, Brad, same thing.
No, I completely agree. And on top of that, we talked about it religiously already. They already have a win there this season. So they know how to win in that building. They know what, they know the commute time. They know everything. Okay. So it's basically, again, it's just another, I know it's a playoff game, but I think for them, it's just another game where they're going in there to win, to execute a game plan. And again, this is a team right now that is playing well. They are playing with momentum, and they have gotten pieces back. And I think that's all positive momentum going into this game, and that's going to help them win this game. And they also, as Gordon provided last year, they have great leadership this year. And I think leadership and experience are important in these situations, and they have it. So I do think that, if I'll be honest with you, if there's really any pressure on anyone, I don't think it's on the players right now. I think the players are ready. I think it's on Coach Uhl as a first-year coach.
Tell me why you said, before I come back to Danny and Gordon, why do you say Coach Uhl is in the tough spot? Tell us why.
Because this is his first experience in this moment. And again, I know that there's guys on the court that are going through their first playoff game. But again, they've had all these games, right, to prepare against these really good teams, and they've played Yeshiva. Now, for Coach Uhl, right, he's a great coach. He's done a fantastic job. But he's never been a head coach in this situation. And that is something that, again, is a tough spot, but I believe in him. And that's why we think they're going to win tonight, because I think that he's gotten some good experience. He's obviously won in that arena already. So I am confident in that. But again, he has to make those tough decisions when guys get 2 fouls. He has to make those tough decisions, right, when the Yeshiva is making a run, right? Either call a timeout or let the guys play. Those aren't easy decisions, especially when you're in your first time doing it. So, again, I think he's going to do the right thing. I'm confident in this team. They've been game planning. They're ready to go. It also helps that he has an experienced assistant in Manchester. That's a good thing as well.
Who's been there? Yep, good point.
So that's a positive. But, again, I think, the players are ready. The game plan is there. And Coach Uhl's a guy who's in his first time doing this. But I think he's ready to go. I think he's going to have a great day today.
Before I ask Danny that same question, I mean, is that fair, Gordon? I mean, I hadn't thought of it that Coach Uhl would be the one that had the pressure here because he hasn't been in the playoffs. He hasn't coached in this spot. I mean, I hadn't thought of it that way. Is that a fair statement from the Brute Force?
I think the coach always has a little bit more pressure. I don't think it's like a tremendous amount more than what the players are going to have tonight. Like anytime you're in the playoffs, there's pressure, right? And like obviously we had success last year, and they want to match that and they want to take it a step further than we did last year, and they have goals. But no, I don't think he's going to look at it from like it's too much pressure. I think as a coach, you always like put pressure on yourself, like no matter what the game is, no matter what kind of season, no matter what kind of team you have. But no, I think he'll be fine. I don't think he'll worry about it too much. I think they as a team are going to have some pressure, but they've been in these moments before, and like I don't see it being an issue for them.
Is that something you see the same, Danny? I mean, I hadn't thought about that. I mean, would Mr. Reiner have had the pressure? Go ahead.
When Rufus was talking about like the first time experience, I can tell you I played with 3 different coaches in college. And my last one was Mr. Reiner, and a Hall of Fame coach in that. He just, Kansas State, couple of Canarsie teams that were national champions in the 70s, put about, 6 to 8 players in the NBA. Just a tremendous, and his experience and the calm in the huddle is it was, as a player and as an experienced coach, was priceless for us. When he told us that we were going to win a game and we were down 2 and they were like 45 seconds, we believed him. So, as Brute Force was talking, it's a matter of do you pull someone out in the first half with 2 fouls? Do you take that risk that he gets the third? Do you call a timeout when the other team's having a 6 to 8 point run? Those are the things that experienced coach goes. If the coach has it, then it doesn't matter in the playoffs. But those do, and just like players, coaches get nervous too. So I imagine, like we said, there's really no surprises. It should be a really competitive game, and it's going to be fun to watch.
Absolutely, no question about that. And earlier I heard momentum, and I want to ask you guys this, and Coach Willis will join us in a few minutes. And Danny, if you want to hang out, I mean, I'll have to keep you because you're actually doing a great job. So we'll keep you here with us as we get ready for the game. But why not? You're a Hall of Famer. So what am I going to tell you? No, I mean you are a Hall of Famer. But momentum is a thing. Brad, we were speaking about this. I think it was last week off the air. We were speaking maybe one of the games I was watching, and we wound up winning. I think it might have been the old Westbury game. It was important we won that game. We won the next couple of games, obviously the Vincent game and the Brooklyn game, which Coach will talk about in a second. And I'll ask all 3 of you guys this question. Is it important to have momentum going into the playoffs? I felt last year we had clear momentum. Obviously, the team had, Gord, you won 12 games in conference, and the team was special. This team has been a little different. We've had some injuries. We've had some challenges. We've obviously had a new coach come in here very late. We've also had a style in terms of the tempo we play, also some different players. I mean, Brad, do you feel like the team right now has the momentum? I kind of think so because those 3 games, winning them, I think gives us 3 wins, kind of confidence. We've had a little bit of a tough stretch, I think, at home there at Danzy for a little bit, some tough calls that went against us. And momentum, is that a thing? And do you feel like we have it right now?
Oh, it's definitely a thing, and we definitely have it right now. And I think that's important, And we talk about momentum, right? It's not just like because we won, we have momentum. It's because of also the way that we're playing, right? The way that we're defending, the way that the culture is building right now. Now, those are the things that I think are important when it comes to the momentum of the team right now going into the playoffs. And yeah, I said it for weeks, Tom, that I said, listen, these guys right now, they got to do the job, but they want to get some momentum going into the playoffs. Right? We're talking about the last couple of games of the season and how important they were going to be just for a momentum standpoint, right? So that they go in the playoffs with confidence, firing on all cylinders. And I think right now they're doing a great job of that, and that's going to help them in this game. It's tough sometimes when you're not really playing that well going into the playoffs, and then you got to go into a team that is. I think right now these are 2 teams that are playing at a high level, 2 coaches that are coaching at a high level, right? And I think that this is a really nice clash of powers right here. And I think that without that momentum, that would be a detriment to St. Joe's. But again, we don't have that because we're playing good basketball. Our culture is there. We returned some players who came back and gave us some positive feedback and positive minutes. So I think that everything right now is trending upward for our Golden Eagles, which gives us a great chance to win tonight.
Gordon, I felt like that Brad makes a good point, and maybe I hadn't thought of it that way, and I'll ask Danny because obviously Danny's team that went to the Final Four kind of had maybe a similar story to the Golden Eagles here. Maybe last year, you guys hadn't been in this spot in a long time. We would speak all the time about this the first time you did this in 7 years or 10 years or 9 years. But yet this team, most of them were here in the playoffs. They've had success, and I did think that they ended the season with a couple wins in a row. It kind of got them to where they are right now. And you always want to go into the postseason feeling good about yourselves. And is that important to have momentum? And maybe to Brad's point, this team actually might be in a better place than you guys were last year, because we would always talk about on the air, first time you've done this since then and that, and they've been here before. I mean, what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, so much of the playoffs is just getting hot at the right time, right? Like, there's so many teams you can look through, any level, high school, college, pro, like teams that just got hot late in the regular season. They were just playing their best basketball come playoff time, come conference tournament time. And those are the teams that go on runs. You can have teams that have like an overall like great season, but they're not playing their best basketball heading into the playoffs. And those are the teams that can get knocked off sometimes. So momentum going into the playoffs is a huge thing. You want to be playing your best basketball. Obviously, they've won 3 in a row. And also, they're fully healthy. Like, the whole year they've missed some combination of Alec, Timmy, and Liam. And tonight they got all 3 of them back. Whole team's back. So they're fully healthy. They got 3 games under the belt. And, yeah, I think the fact that they have been there, like last year, again, we walked into Manhattanville and, like, I was the only guy who had been on a team that had been in a conference tournament game, and I didn't even play in that game. So, like, we had a bunch of guys who've never really stepped on the court in a playoff game, on the road, like, and it's tough. Like, you don't know what to expect. Like, so I think then this year, the whole team is pretty much returners. It's their second go around at this. Like, I think they've been working all year to get back to this very moment, to get back to the playoffs. We've been working with that in mind. So yeah, I think they're in a great spot. They got momentum, they're healthy, and they've been there. So I think that's all you can really ask for.
And before I get to you, Danny, I want to give a shout out to one of our old friends in Gordon. Actually, your old assistant coach there, Mr. Coach Jason Gordieso, obviously famous Coach Gordieso, obviously with Malloy College now, and he's starting a family, and he's just all over the place, big fan of ours, and I think we owe him an appearance on Sports. So maybe after the Malloy season, we'll get him on and talk about that journey, and we always love Coach Gordieso. Coach is the man. It was an honor to meet him last year at the All-American Burger, which Brad really was not crazy about that place, but it was good to meet Coach Gordieso. That's what made it worth it. But Danny and I are, we're city guys, so we know a good burger or two, but that's not what we're here to talk about. Danny, I felt like the momentum is a thing. I remember speaking with you a couple times. We'll speak about the induction ceremony a little bit and maybe kind of talk about that next month when you come on for a full segment about it. But, I mean, I felt like late in the year, you guys are in a similar spot to this team at the moment where you kind of got everybody in. There was a game, a moment. I think it was the Staten Island game we spoke about where everything kind of crystallized and you guys kind of got on that run and things kind of led to another. Almost one thing led to another. And is momentum a thing, and can that lead into where it could go into special things? And I mean, talk about that from your vantage point, because you've obviously experienced that, which led you into obviously playing in the Final Four.
The momentum, it's just describing that you're playing better because you're winning. It means that your defense is finally down solid. Your offense is clicking on all cylinders. Everybody is confident in each other. You're not turning the ball over. You're rebounding well. You're boxing out. So when all those things start clicking and the team starts having confidence, then that's what, people call it momentum. You're just playing better. I mean, wins just start accumulating because, hey, everybody did their job and they went to the next game and the next game and the next game. And before you realize it, the coach has a good rotation. The starters get their minutes. The guys, the substitutes know when they're coming in, if it's foul trouble or just, to relieve someone. And that just carries into the, into the playoffs. And, we went on a 10-1, end of season. So we did have the momentum. But I can tell you is that we kind of, did some, I guess in the beginning of the year was trial and error on, finding the right rotations. Coaches struggle with that.
Similar to this team this year. I mean, listen, Jay Gaudiello, right, was a big part of last year's team, kind of was at times didn't get the minutes. I mean, listen, Tim Hurt we talked about Timmy. We talked about Alec Tabata missed the first half of the season. Liam Sheehy missed the second half. And similar to you, Danny, where that Brooklyn team with all the players you had, the rejected Davis, and obviously with some Richie McAuliffe, yourself, Eddie De La Guardia, everybody else, it was kind of like you didn't have that rotation set till later in the year almost.
Yeah, and then right as the playoffs happened, because we didn't win the City University, that we didn't win the title that year. Staten Island did. I mean, Staten Island had a great team, but we, Rich McAuliffe, our leading scorer, suffered a leg injury. Rick Davis, the rejector, got his front tooth knocked out, and had oral surgery.
You sure he wasn't wrestling there, Danny? You sure he wasn't one of the wrestlers that I know?
That was there was a physical game back then. So, but it was next guy up, and because we practiced as hard as we played games, and under Coach Reiner and Coach Gustis, we were ready. The next guy is just, and I know that's a easy expression to say, but when we were fighting for minutes, and I don't even know what Brute Force's first name is. Is it Brad?
It is Brad, but you can call him the Brute Force.
You guys know about fighting for minutes, and then all of a sudden, when someone's down and the minutes are in front of you, everybody was ready. So we was happy. We ended up, doing well because everybody was ready on a competitive level in practice. And then when the games allowed minutes to be played for people, they rose to the occasion. It was pretty good.
And that's why I want to recognize, before I run some of the stats over, before Coach Willis joined us, who, for whatever reason, is having technical difficulties. It's like, put the camera on. It's all you have to do. But we love Coach Willis. So that's a running little joke there. But, I mean, I do think that's why guys are so important, like a Basir Hoyd, Chris Connors, Nick Nemekis, Tom Bell, Justin Turner. Although Turner's been in the rotation a little bit more at times, but those guys are so important because those would be the kind of guys that would keep Gordon on their toes, or the kind of guys that would keep Brad on his toes when Brad was healthy, because those guys, whether you're the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th man on that rotation, and when we had Coach Gordon Gordon, those were the guys that he would speak about, say those were the most important players, because in practice, like Danny said, you're fighting for minutes, you're fighting for time. Those are the players that keep the starters on their toes here. And I want to run through some stats for our team here, which will kind of give us a kind of sense of where we are for those that might be listening here for the first time. Spencer Malloy leads the Skyline Conference in rebounds per game, 8.6. Xavier Allen was 6th, 7.7 per game. Spencer Malloy also leads the Skyline Conference with just under 51% from the field. Xavier Allen, 7th in three-point percentage, 41.1. Money Matt Hurt, of course, one of our all-time favorites to Brute Force. Matt Hurt, 34.8% from three this year, 7th in the Skyline Conference. Xavier Allen was also 5th in free throw percentage, just under 75%. We led the conference in defense, 63.3 points per game. Our defense wins championships, right, guys? We were 3rd also in three-point percentage, just about a 3rd. Liam the Rejector Shee had a game of 6 blocks, 5 blocks. Danny, Rick the Rejector Davis would be proud of him. 27th in the nation, 63.2 points a game we were allowed. Also, Malloy and Allen were 4th and 5th in the conference in scoring. They both score over 15 points a game. I also want to shout out Ryan McNeely, who was kind of our 6th man this year, scores just about 8 points per game. He's the guy that I think has really improved here consistently over the past year or so, where he's a guy that's getting a lot more minutes and kind of confident in his role. And we are here on SportsWire Radio. We are here with 3 legends of the game of college basketball as we are getting you ready for 8 p.m. the Max Stern Center between our SJLI Golden Eagles men's basketball team and the Yeshiva Maccabees. There's none other than the Brute Force Brad Weiss, 26 all-time in school history and rebounds. Gordon Scheuer, a key component to that 2020 historic team. 15 wins in the regular season, best regular season in 8 years. 12 wins in the conference, best since 2012. But most importantly, got that win against the nationally ranked Yeshiva at the Max Stern Center in an environment like this. And he was one of my favorite players still to this day, and a Hall of Famer. None other than a Hall of Fame. And Danny, in fact, you remind me almost like the Nature Boy Ric Flair. So we're going to call you the Nature Boy. Danny Burns here, legendary Hall of Famer from our Brooklyn College Kingsman team at the time. 1982 Final Four. It was the 40th anniversary last year. They finally get inducted late last year after a long overdue there at West Quad. And Danny has always been one of our biggest and dearest supporters. And my name is the Reverend Tom Bryce. If you like what you hear from us on Facebook and YouTube, continue to follow follow and subscribe at SportsWire Radio. Thankful for all of the new fans of late. Also, sportnarium.com/player. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You can listen to all of our content. We play stuff from all over the world. We play music, talk. We stream these shows. If you don't want to see the mutton chops, the long hair, Gordon's impression of me and my New York, Brooklyn style voice. Also, my personal page on Facebook at Tom Bryson. We are having a phenomenal time here waiting for Mr. Alec Willis, but we do not go on and wait. We continue to talk, and let's talk about SJLI and Yeshiva here coming into the game, and I'll get Danny's perspective in a second, but I want to go to Gordon first because Gordon knows this team better than anybody, and he might even know the Yeshiva team better than anybody. For us to win, Gordon, if you were to have one or two key players, give me those key players for us, and hopefully giving us here another victory and hopefully some more pre- and post-game shows.
Key players. All right. Well, I'll go with the veteran. I'll go with Matt Hurt. He's our 5th-year guy.
Good choice. Good choice.
He can stretch the floor obviously with his shooting. One of the better shooters on the team. So his ability to stretch the floor. If he can make shots tonight, if he can help us out on the defensive end, help us out on the glass a little bit, he's going to be huge. Obviously, Alec Jabbat is a game wrecker. So if he's healthy and he's playing at his normal, where he's just bouncing up and down, blocking shots, grabbing rebounds. I mean, he's super aggressive. He can change a game by himself.
He's like a Giannis almost, like a middle mini Giannis, how he plays out there. He can rebound, he can shoot, he can pass the ball. I mean, he's just really agile.
Yeah, and I think the guards, too. The guards got to be able to take on the challenge of guarding the Badesh and Samet, however you say that.
Trust me, I'm having the same problem.
So, I think that's the key. The guys who can keep them in front, run them off the 3-point line, be physical with them, and take care of the ball as well. I think the last game they had like 20 turnovers versus you. So take care of the ball, be able to guard their guards who are obviously can really shoot it, can really score. Just all those guys. Listen, everyone in a playoff game's got to be able to contribute and be able to step up and make plays. So 1 through 15,
All right, well, we'll get to Danny and the Brute Force in a second, but I want to give an introduction to somebody who actually knows both these teams, I think, better than anybody. And he's actually got a win over the Golden Eagles, and his team played pretty well also at times against Yeshiva this past year. A legendary player in his own right. He was captain, of course, of the St. Joseph's Brooklyn Bears basketball team, of course, that we see in downtown Brooklyn. Also had a decorated career here on Staten Island. Man, family name sells better than anybody I could think of. The man really does it all. He is even doing real estate these days. We are talking about none other than the assistant coach for our SJC Brooklyn Bears men's basketball team, the real Alec Willis. And Alec, coach, congratulations. And I watched you on the stream this past year, and you look good out there. And how you doing tonight?
Thank you. I appreciate that introduction. You are too kind, to say the least. I'm happy to be in the presence of a lot of great people here, and just looking forward to talk some basketball.
Absolutely, and obviously we're getting ready here for the 8 o'clock game, and I'll come back to Brad and Danny. They've talked a bit, but I wanted to get your perspective because, one of the things I think that the Golden Eagles have struggled a bit on, and I was speaking about this obviously with some of the other guys here, and Danny had pointed this out correctly, is that I think that this team struggles when it comes to the three-point shot. You guys did a phenomenal job on him with both games. Obviously, you had two of the best three-point shooters in the entire conference, Jonathan Reno and Evan Sarakis, and Jonathan Reno especially. I mean, he was just all over the place, shot after shot in these two games. And I kind of think that's kind of the Achilles heel of this team right now. And talk about how important that is, and why were you guys actually able to have that kind of success against Long Island and able to hit as many threes as you did in both games, whether it was in Brooklyn or this past weekend at the Danzy Center?
I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to just matchups. I think our matchups with St. Joseph's Long Island helps us more than some of the other teams in our conference. But our conference comes down to matchups. Who can exploit certain matchups where? When can they exploit them? And if you could exploit a matchup where you're getting 3 points versus 2, then it's just favorable to you. But I would say if you looked at our stats, if you watched our team throughout the year, it came down to really whether or not we were hitting those threes or if we weren't hitting those threes. And we just happened the first game against St. Joseph's Long Island to be hitting a few threes. I know Chris Tracy came off the bench. He had a few. I
know. I think he hit. I was gonna say he hit a couple in a row, if I'm not mistaken. In that second half, it was almost like I was watching. We were up 10, and all of a sudden, next thing I know, I was like, my stomach was in knots. I'm like, oh boy, we're in trouble here.
Yep. Yep, he hit some big ones, and there were timely ones. And I think even going into our second matchup, it was obviously our last game of the season because we didn't qualify for the playoffs. Reno got hot, but got hot when we were already down, and it was just trying to give us some momentum when we probably could have used that momentum a little earlier. But it really was. I watch Patchogue and you watch how they play. That's what I refer to them, Patchogue of St. Joe's, Long Island.
I know you've said that before. We've had you on a few times. You always say that.
That's how I refer to them. Being the Brooklyn guy, I have to differentiate. But what we realize is things they excel at is their help defense. They really crowd the ball on drives. They really crowd the ball in the paint or below the 3-point line. And we emphasize to our guys always, but especially in these matchups, to just make the extra pass. We want to suck them in and draw them out, and it kind of looks like a heartbeat. If we can get them doing this more often than not, then we think it's going to lead to some open looks or some good looks. Whether or not we hit them, that's going to be on our guys and our preparation leading to the game. But they are one of the better defensive teams in our conference, and I think it's because their willingness to play defense together and having their teammates back and being able to just be there on every line drive to the hoop. And it's just whether or not we get guys relocating on the perimeter the right way, that's going to open up a look for us. And the first game, it opened up good looks. We hit them. The second game, we couldn't seem to hit a shot.
Hey, you were up 37-35 right in the beginning of the second half. So, I mean, to be fair, that first half, you guys had the lead most of the first half. And even in the second half, you tied it. You hit a 3, if I'm not mistaken, right before halftime. It was 35-35. You got the first bucket. And then it was kind of like after that, kind of what you said, you guys do kind of live and die by the 3, and it kind of, you guys went ice cold. Because I think in the first half, I think you were almost 50% from 3, and then it kind of leveled off a little bit in the second half. So I kind of think that that's kind of maybe where things kind of struggled there. And let me ask you a follow-up question before I get to these other guys, because I kind of want to get your perspective, because I never got a chance to ask you this question, but obviously you've played now, coached at Yeshiva. I mean, talk about that environment, and how does it make you feel? Does it make you nervous when you go in there? And some of the guys here, all of you that played at Yeshiva at various levels, and they kind of answered, and they didn't think at all they had any nerves. What were you like going into the Max Stern Athletic Center, and how do you think those guys there from Patchogue, as you refer to them as, are going to feel like right now as we get close to tip-off?
I mean, that was one of my favorite places to play, just from a competitive standpoint. As a competitor, you want to be in those environments. You want that energy in the gym. You want that. I don't want to say cutthroat. I think that's too harsh of a word, but that's really, they're so fantastic at rooting for their team that they're not necessarily rooting against you, but you feel that they're rooting for their team in such a passionate way that it almost feels like they're coming at you. And as a competitor, as a player, and now a coach, I'll tell you what, I'm a lot more nervous as a coach playing there because I'm sitting closer to the fans than I was when I was on the court.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Good point. And I think we lost him there. I think we lost Alec Willis. It got lost in translation. There we go. There you go. We lost you there for a second, Coach.
Sorry about that. But in terms of nerves, I wouldn't use the word nervous as much as I would use the word excited. And in it, as a player and now as a coach, you kind of feed off that environment, and you want to play in environments like that. We play Division III basketball. Not every gym we walk into has a crowd like that. Not every gym we walk into has the passion like that, and it just makes playing at our level so much better.
Danny, I saw you nodding. I'll come back to Brad because he's got a couple of thoughts, and I'll ask him a thought or two on a key player or two, and maybe if he has a different thing. But I saw you nodding a bit when Coach Willis was talking about the fact that, there's certain gyms that they don't have the atmosphere. And obviously, you played in CUNY, and I've been in a lot of those gyms, and I don't want to say who and who. I think we all could kind of fill in the blanks on those certain environments. But is there a point maybe you think, Danny, in terms of like maybe you actually – the other way, you turn it on more? Because, when you go to a gym where, there's like 20 people there, it almost is like, it's like maybe it's a deflator. Maybe it just, you don't maybe raise the bar up a little bit. Is there a kind of a turn it on, turn it off type of environment? And maybe as a player that makes it easier to kind of be turned on with the adrenaline tonight?
Yeah, I think that, as Coach Willis was just talking, that you like going into environments where there's a crowd there. And I can tell you is that, we played Division III, and the next year we went Division I. So we went from playing, Mega Evers.
I wasn't going to say that, but that was the name I was thinking of. Mega
Going
Evers.
South Carolina, Boston University, Michigan State. So, I mean, the environment's changed. But I can tell you right now, nothing's better than a player when you have a good first half and then you start, they introduce you at, halftime and the crowd boos you, and it's like, that's great because they recognize good play. And like, as Coach Willis was saying is when you go to Yeshiva, they're not booing you. They're just really celebrating their team and how they play. But they kind of like going to the Garden. They immediately recognize good defense on the other way, a good play made by an opponent. So, you appreciate the crowd that knows basketball. And you know what? They appreciate good basketball there.
Yep.
You know what? And that's an excellent point before I get to Brad and Gordon. I always felt like the Yeshiva fan, they're almost like, in a way, like the Yankees in baseball. They're almost like the Cowboys in football in a way at our level, Division III, because they travel everywhere. I mean, you see them, they play in these different places, whether it's Wesleyan or these other schools, and it's like they still travel to go. I mean, we were talking, Danny, that on their YouTube feeds for their games, they get like 800 people watch, 1,000 people watch. I mean, you're lucky at some schools. I mean, you get like 10 and they get like 1,000 almost. And Brad, I was wondering before I come back to Gordon on this, because I want to ask a fun question for you guys, because Alec brought up the boo point. I have to throw this question to everybody just to kind of lighten the mood as we get closer to tip-off. But for you, Brad, give me a player or two that you think is going to be key. Obviously, Gordon talked about Matt Hurt. That's a good one. But is there anybody else you think is a key for us to be able to go out there and come away with the victory?
Yeah, I think one name that we haven't talked about enough, who hasn't necessarily had great games against Yeshiva, but I think today could be one who could pop your eyes open, is Jake Caudiello. I think that's a guy who, again, hasn't really gotten, going against Yeshiva, kind of maybe not a lot of shots, not a lot of opportunities. But I think today they're going to be so honed in on Tabata and other guys who are in the game like Malloy that the shots are going to come for him.
Similar to last year with Hurt and McNeely getting the open looks in the second half.
I think Hurt and McNeely will, but again, Yeshiva, scouts too. They know those guys, right? And again, with a guy like Caudiello having a good performance in the first two games, they're not going to key in on him as much as they are Hurd and McNeely and Tabata. And I just think a guy like that, even Justin Turner is another one, okay, who can really go out there and provide a big impact for the Golden Eagles. So I really like that. And then you, Tom, I can't not say it. I mean, your boy, the rejector, Liam Sheehy. I mean, how can you not say his name? I mean, this guy's going to go out there. And again, it's not just about the points. And, somebody
he's far better. We don't need him to score. I like
him. Because listen, somebody like myself could really appreciate this, right? A guy who just rebounds, blocks shots, run the floor hard, makes the defense collapse and gets other guys open shots. Like, that's a guy who plays a pivotal role on this team. And I just think his presence as a rebounder, his presence as a screener, like all the different things that he's going to do. And I sound like Tom Bryce right now, but I'm telling you, this guy is going to have a big impact in this game. I really do think so. So look at guys like Caudiello and Turner. And then I also want to, note that the rejector, Liam Sheehy, is going to have a big role. And then,
yep. Go ahead.
I was just going to also touch on Yeshiva. Obviously, we talk enough about the two guys, the two shooters, but another guy that hasn't been mentioned, Max Zaheem. All right.
Yes, he was one of the players I had in mind. Max Zaheem.
I can't say again. I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong, but this is a guy who's averaging 16 a game, not shooting as high volume 3-point wise, but is a very capable scorer. So this is a guy who's going to give our Golden Eagles another good game. He's had a good game. So that's a guy to look for. And then also Zucker. We haven't talked enough about Zucker.
He was the next guy because he's right there. He's second in the conference in assist, third in rebound. So this is a guy that he's almost one of those guys, which is very rare.
I'm not gonna do this because I'm not gonna just put him at this level. But his numbers and the way he plays kind of reminds me of a Gabe Lifer, not to his level. Okay, but like he rebounds, he throws, he gets a lot of assists. Right, he passes the ball, he makes good passes. So that type of role on that team he kind of plays, not the same exact player, but same sort of role, and he does a great job at it.
All right, let me ask you guys a fun question. I want to ask Coach a thought or two on these players in a second, but because I think he brought it up, I have to ask you all guys: have you guys been booed at a college basketball game? You always want to jump in. Have you guys actually been booed at games? I mean, like to that loud? Have you guys ever all been booed?
I have, and I think it's a great feeling.
Yeah. So what was that like? So I have to ask you, what was that like when you were booed? Because I know you played in the Final Four. You played D1. I mean, what was that like? I mean, were you expecting to be booed, and how did you kind of react afterwards?
I didn't expect to be booed. But it is kind of fun when you come out after the locker room, at halftime, and you go into your bench, you're just throwing down the towels, and you start to shoot around to warm up a little, and the crowd boos you. I mean, that's pretty cool, when they introduce you before the game, right after the national anthem, and they start doing it, and all of a sudden they you get a boo. You're like looking around like, who are they booing, me? I didn't even take a shot yet,
Hey, how about you for Gordon and the Brute Force? I don't think I've ever asked you this question, Brad. I mean, have you guys been booed at all ever in a game?
I mean, I guess I'll take this one because I actually have a funny perspective on this. So,
let's hear it because I want to hear it.
Have I been booed in a game? Yes, absolutely. Okay, just here's the thing, though. Like, again, I'm not, like Gordon and Alec are like skilled guards who can score. Like, I'm not that guy. I'm the physical guy who makes things happen, takes charges, and gets physical. So no one likes me. No one likes me. So I've had that. But this is why I wanted to bring this up. With that being said, at Yeshiva specifically, I remember when I was starting there my junior year, they actually cheered for me in the starting lineup. And the reason why is because of my last name. Obviously, my last name is Weiss, so it gives off the Jewish, last name because my dad is Jewish. So when I was in the starting lineup against Yeshiva, they cheered for me. All right, so I was very appreciative of that. Even though, I did do well that game. So they didn't cheer for me later in the game. But they cheered for me in the starting line.
Now, did Coach Steinmetz maybe try to approach you or recruit you? Was that maybe what it was? Was there a conversation? He said, Brad, you did well against us. What do you think about, you are Jewish, you are Jewish.
Listen, Steinmetz, liked my game, but he had good players. I think he was all right.
He had very good players all throughout the time you played there. I mean, have you ever been booed, Gordon? I mean, has that ever occurred? And you played at Lebanon also, I know. So I'm sure I was just wondering about that now that we're kind of having fun.
Been booed a couple times, but more notably to me, it's just like I got all the insults. I would get like the short jokes were always big. I used to get, I think the best one I ever got was like, "What's your bedtime?" That was a really good one.
What?
But yeah, I think the insults directed at you are more funny. Something about like your hair, like they'll look up like your Instagram or something. I remember at LVC we played at Hood College, which is a school in Maryland.
Yep.
It had the best fans for just straight up badgering you. So whether you're on the bench, whether you're on the court, you were just getting harassed the whole game. So I remember like, we were like taking the ball out of bounds and I had to call a play or whatever. And they're like, "Oh, what is that? Is that like a JV play, Gordon? Like, nice job. They have a good call, Gordon." And I'm like, "Yo, like, it was hilarious. You have to not laugh in the moment." But yeah, I think the direct insults are funnier. But yes, I have been booed as well for sure.
Well, listen, don't feel too bad on the air. I had yesterday, I'll make you all chuckle before we get to a few more thoughts here before tip-off. I interviewed a wrestler yesterday. He actually, in his Instagram story, put, "Back with old mutton chops." That was his actual quote. He didn't say my name. He said, "Back with old mutton chops." So certainly, it can be certainly those ways or other. But, Alec, I want to come to you because obviously I want to be respectful of everybody's time because the game is going to start in a little while. And I was curious because you just saw the SJLI Golden Eagles. And for you, I mean, is there a player or two that you guys had maybe trouble coaching the most? And maybe conversely, is that player or two going to be maybe the reason why the Golden Eagles may come away with yet another win at the Max Stern Center? Or give me your perspective on that as we get ready for tip-off soon.
Yeah, for sure. I think it comes down to just what these players do as their strengths in accordance to this game. I think Xavier Allen poses a big issue for
matchup
Yeshiva.
problem.
Yeah, a big matchup problem for Yeshiva because he's a quick guard. He can get in the lane. He's pretty athletic. He has a nice mid-range jump shot. So when help slides down, he could pull up over them. I have noticed those quicker guards have had some advantage over the years against Yeshiva, and he's strong too. And that's deceptive because you don't think he's as strong as he is until you see him on the court standing next to you. Because on film, it's hard to see with these Division III game films. But I would say Xavier Allen poses a big a big matchup problem for Yeshiva. The other one I would say, if Matthew Hurt is hitting shots, it changes their team a lot.
He was. I really think he was. I think he was the leading scorer in the game last year at Max Stern, if I'm not mistaken. I think he led us in points in that game. I think.
If he's hitting shots, I think it opens things up because it opens those driving lanes for Xavier Allen that much more. If he's not hitting shots, then it favors obviously Yeshiva. But if Matthew Hurt's hitting shots and Xavier Allen's got what he's going to the rim really on point, then I think Yeshiva might be in for a longer night than they would hope. I think the higher the score gets, though, the more it favors Yeshiva.
You know, it's funny you said that, and I want to ask some of the other guys in a second, and maybe I'll throw it out to Danny as well on a more general point. But one of the things I've said about this team all year, maybe not so much Gordon last year's team, because you guys at times went a little bit more above like 80 and 90 even on some occasions. I feel like that if we give up over 70, most of the time we lose that game. If we give up under 70, we win that game. Look at the numbers, look at the box scores. I think our record, giving up games under 70, we've won almost all of them. And I mean, for you guys and Brad and Gordon in that point, I mean, is it true to what Alex said, which I actually think he's 100% right on, is that if we go into a track meet, we give up over 70, more than likely we're going to have a long night? I mean, what's your thoughts on that, Brad?
Yeah, obviously, and I think, we talked about it before about, and Alec mentioned the strengths of the team. Obviously, St. Joe's strength is their defense. Yeshiva's is their offense. So they're going against each other in that matchup. And obviously, yes, I do agree that ideally, and I think really what St. Joe's wants is a lower scoring game, which would definitely favor them. With that being said, I'm not going to go as far to say that if this game does get high scoring that St. Joe's can't keep pace. It would depend on, as Alex said, is Matt shooting well? Is Ryan McNeely shooting well? Okay. Is Tabata getting his shots and getting in the lane and making plays? Allen as well. You go down the list. They can obviously score with Yeshiva. Would they prefer to do that? No. They want to play a defensive style where they're slowing down Yeshiva's offense and them getting out in transition and getting open shots and getting open opportunities. So, ideally, yeah, I agree with you 100%, Tom. They don't want to get into a game where it's in the 70s. That's not the way St. Joe's wants to play. But I think that if the game does get to a point where there's a lot of scoring, St. Joe's still can win the game. They're not out of it, okay? But, again, that's not the way they want to play. And based on the matchups, as you said, right, the first one, they win. The second one, they lose. And the second one, obviously, we're all looking at the 54-point second half, and Yeshiva ends up scoring 74. That was the reason why they lost, and I think St. Joe's knows that, and I think that's what they've been focusing on all week.
Gordon, I want to ask you that because, again, this year's team I felt was a little different to the way they got back to the postseason. You guys were a little bit more in terms that you could do different things, but it's also, I think, frankly, a little bit more of a deeper team this year, but we had the injuries. But do you kind of feel the same way a little bit from afar, and that if it goes over 70, it's a matchup problem for us, or do you feel like this team, it doesn't matter? What's your perspective on that?
I think it 100% favors Yeshiva. I think Yeshiva just traditionally, not even just this year, just in general, they play more of a high tempo, high pace, spread it out.
It's almost like Hunter, where Hunter scores like 1,000,000 points. I mean, not the same way, but I knew you would laugh, Coach. You got that, Coach Phyllis, right away. I knew when I mentioned Hunter, you totally got that.
Nothing like that, but yeah, 100%. It definitely favors Yeshiva the higher it goes. St. Joe's plays a bit of a slower tempo. They definitely want to sit down and guard you a little bit more. So yeah, I think it's no mystery, right? Like the higher scoring, you would think that it's going to favor Yeshiva. So we'll see what happens. Yeah, I would definitely say though, St. Joe's wants to keep this game in the 60s probably if possible. But Yeshiva's going to make shots, so you're not gonna shut them down entirely. They're not gonna you're not gonna hold them to 50 points, right? Like,
no. I mean, listen, they shoot almost 47% from the field, and Orton Bedish, almost leads the nation 52% from three. You had Jonathan Reno, who is really good, Evan Sarakis, but he shoots 52%. And listen, Zevi Samet, 41% from three, 14th in the nation in scoring. So it's going to be tough. And, Danny, I wanted to ask you the general question, because obviously you played in the Final Four. You had that big run. Is that important that there's a certain tempo? Like, I almost feel like that St. Joe's has had an identity, and that their identity this year was when they won, They played very well defensively. When they lost, they got in trouble offensively because, like Brad said, gave up 54 points in a half, or they gave up 8 or 10 points in a run, like when Brooklyn beat them there. And I mean, is there a certain tempo and identity you look for in a team in these moments as you look to get a win here?
You know, it's I know I'm being Captain Obvious here, but if you play good defense and you shut out down the other team and you don't allow them runs, you're going to be in the ball game. You know, usually in playoffs, you know, it's usually about 6 to 8 points lower than the season average, because every pass, every turnover, every rebound means something. And that's the competitive game environment you really want to be in when you play these games, you know, where everything counts. And usually you're a little bit more methodical about it. You know, you're not going to give up the points off turnovers, because that pass that you may have done in the regular season, you may turn it down and look the other way to reverse the ball. You know, instead of taking that chance of trying to stuff it inside, or, you know, trying to get a cutter on the baseline. You don't want those turnovers. So those gambles or those risks are eliminated. And that's why usually 6 to 8 points lower than the season average. I tend to believe today's game is probably going to be like 70, like 65, 70 for the winner, and probably 6 to 8 points lower for the loser.
Last year in the playoffs, before Gordon gets to closing thoughts, because Gordon obviously has got to run, and we want to really appreciate Gordon's time, in fact, and we hope to get Gordon on for more coverage here this week. Let's certainly say a prayer for that. But 63-58 last year was the game with Manhattanville, and that was kind of, like you said, playoff basketball. It was in the 60s. When I was covering the John Jay games, when the team had Levy and LaGuardia, the games were always in the 60s. So those are some fair points there. Gordon, I know you're a busy man. You got a lot on your plate, so I want to give you the floor. Anything else you're up to, let us know. Anything that, you're out there, you're working on. We hope to hopefully have more coverage here throughout the week, as we hopefully, our fingers crossed, the guys can win tonight. We can have a couple more of these, and I think we all had a great time. So I hope that this is the beginning for you with us here on SportsWire this week and more. So I give you the floor. Anything you want to plug social media-wise, and anything else you're up to, please let us know.
No, I just want to say thank you again for having me. Really appreciate it. It's been a long time coming, I feel like, being on the show here with you guys.
Well, Matt Hurd is next, by the way. He's next.
Yeah, it's just listen, I just appreciate you guys having me on the show. And, I'm just working Stony Brook. That's all I'm doing these days. I work for Stony Brook Athletics. So just grinding, doing the whole adult thing over here. So nothing special, but, just pulling for my Golden Eagles tonight, show them some love, and really appreciate all you guys do covering St. Joe's athletics, and let's hope for a win tonight.
All right. Well, we thank you for your time, and everybody can follow you at Instagram, Gordon_Scheuer05. And thank you for calling me out this past week. And unfortunately, I could not make it to I appreciate that. Trust me, wrestlers call me out all the time. I certainly enjoy it at this point. So thank you for that. We will definitely, hopefully, have you on maybe Thursday, God willing, we win. And we'll thank you soon, and we'll finish out the rest of the show with the guys here.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right, that was Gordon Scheuer here, and we have a few more minutes, and we'll hang out, get a couple more thoughts from Coach Willis, what he's up to, and also Danny and the Brew Force before tip-off for about 20 or so minutes from now. Also, we'll give you an update from some other Skyline scores. So everybody here that's watching or will watch this, we'll certainly do that. But, Coach Willis, I want to ask you, in terms of, for you here in a game like this, we were talking about the pressure, and obviously Yeshiva's been here, St. Joe's has been here, but hasn't won, and does that matter at all that Yeshiva's been here more and they've won? And does that, and they're in their environment, does that mean anything to you at all as a coach here in this situation?
I think it does, to an extent. Obviously, the players for St. Joseph's have been here. They have a new coach this year.
Yep.
But he's a good coach. So he's coaching at this level for a reason. He knows exactly what it's going to take to get his team to win. And you're following that game plan. I think it matters up until the ball's tipped. Honestly.
The reason we bring it up, because we were speaking about this, and Brad had spoke about that. I wanted to get your perspective as a coach, and that he felt Coach Uhl, he might be the one that had the pressure on him, and I hadn't thought of it in that way.
I mean, honestly, I could see the other side of it too. It's his first year. He's going against a Skyline powerhouse in Yeshiva, and he could be playing with house money. If you look at it from that perspective, anything he do can be a positive. Anything he does, so I wouldn't. Honestly, from a pressure standpoint, I think everyone's mom and dad is feeling it more than themselves, because once that ball gets tipped, Guys just know what they got to do. They're following their scouting reports. They're sprinting down court. They're putting themselves in plays where they don't have to think. Things that have come routine to them all year long. They're trying to seek out those plays and make as many of those happen. Hit open shots, run down court, get a stop, bring the ball down the other way. Like I said, the pressure thing, maybe everything leading up to today, maybe they slept 5 hours instead of 6 hours yesterday. But I think once that ball's tipped, the only ones who's nervous are mom and dad and a few family members in the crowd.
And before we move on here, I want to get to a couple of different scores here for the Skyline Conference because obviously we want to be respectful of that also. It's early, but it is halftime right now, and Merchant Marine is actually up on Manhattanville 35-32 at halftime, so that was a 4-5 matchup. And right now
Merchant
it's
Marine
proven-
and Maritime, right?
Maritime.
Yep. That's what I thought I'd said that. Did I say? I don't even know if I said that or not. But Manhattanville and Mount St. Vincent is also at halftime, and they're 27-27. So right now, listen, Mount St. Vincent, they gave us some trouble. We played them a couple times. They're a tough team, and they played Yeshiva very well here at the Max Athletic Center. I was watching them a couple weeks ago, so that's another score of note. Also, Farmingdale is up predictably big, 43-28 over Mount St. Mary. So to recap, Mount St. Vincent and Manhattanville are tied at 27 at halftime, 35 for Merchant Marine, Maritime 32, and Farmingdale State is up 15 right now over Mount St. Mary. And we'll be kicking off here Yeshiva and St. Joe's in about 20 or so minutes. And before I get to the Brute Force and Danny, I wanted to ask you, Alec, how was this season like? First year coaching and coaching back home at Brooklyn. Obviously, I see you were with one of the Efforts, and Coach Cocazello is always. Coach looks the same all the time. I saw him in the Staten Island Advance at St. Peter's getting honored, and I see him on the streams, and he always looks the same. He got the same face, the same look, but that's the beauty of having a bald head. You always look the same, right? But no, we love Coach Cocazello. But talk about the first year experience coaching now at the college level. How was it? And just anything else you want to add before we move on here.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, Coach Coco is great to learn under him as an assistant, as a staff member versus a player. There's really no words for it because you're seeing it from a different perspective when you're on the court. But my first year overall, obviously, want more wins than we had. We didn't have that successful of a year. We had 2 more wins than last year, which is a positive.
You did beat the Golden Eagles, though. You do have that win against the Golden Eagles.
We did. But they're playing tonight. We're not. I can't talk too much about that.
Hey, fair point.
But overall, it was a great experience to be coaching. I mean, from high school last year to now in college is something I'm really grateful for. The day in and day out of it's obviously so much more intense. You're doing the scouting reports, you're watching film, you're traveling to the games, and you're really just immersing yourself in what my favorite thing in the world is, college basketball. And
Amen.
I've learned a lot. I've learned how to manage my time a lot better because you have to. Scouting reports could take 3-4 hours at times, especially early on in the season when you're seeing teams for the first time or guys come back from being hurt and whatnot. But just learning from our head coach, learning from Sebastian, our assistant coach, because he was here the year prior, how coach likes certain things done, how we like certain things done as a program. And I understood them as a player, but it's a different perspective as an assistant coach. And just building relationships, being a young assistant coach, you have to learn how to navigate through being the guy that the guys in the team can kind of just talk to and vent to, while also navigating the relationship of you also are in communication with the coach and seeing what does coach need to hear, or what is problems that can be solved before they even get to coach and whatnot, and kind of just picking and choosing what the priorities are in terms of certain things that goes on and the little things that need to be addressed but may not have to go to coach and stuff like that. So it was a lot, but it's exactly what I signed up for, and I wouldn't have any other way.
No, and I think obviously, and we'll get to closing thoughts in a second, but I do think that obviously, look, the program is definitely got some chips there. Obviously, unfortunately, I think we lose Evan Sarakis after the season. Evan was obviously one of our favorites.
He's coming back.
One more year? He's coming back.
Yeah.
So did he get the that was the COVID year he came in, right?
So
one more year.
Yeah.
All right. So we have Evan back, Jonathan Reno. I mean, that guy, he's the bomb squad. You've got Anderson Beltre. I mean, you've got Chris Williams you spoke about. So there's some pieces here, I think, on the team, and it's just a tough conference. I mean, 6 teams win 10 games in this conference this year. I mean, Mount St. Vincent was 8-8, and they were no picnic. I mean, even teams like Purchase, every game they played, they were in like every game. I mean, this is not an easy conference. I mean, Danny, no disrespect here, but the CUNY and the Skyline, it's like night and day in the conferences, in the competition. It's almost like in the Skyline, listen, Brooklyn beat SJLI Long Island. I mean, you just never know in this conference. I still think that the program has a lot of building blocks, and certainly I think you'll be a big part of that and what the future is here with the team. So we look forward to all of that here. So obviously, we're getting ready to tip off here. So, Danny, I want to give you some closing thoughts here because we could talk all day about this game, but we all want to watch it. Hopefully, we get more pre- and post-game shows. Maybe we'll have everybody here, hopefully, fingers crossed. And, Danny, we're going to have you back here, obviously, next month. We'll talk about the ceremony and what that meant and kind of get a further discussion with that. But I want to give you the floor. Any closing thoughts you want to share with us? And always good to have you, my friend. And anything else, the floor is yours, my friend.
Hey, listen, it's great talking basketball. And once you talk, like you can talk basketball with people all the time. But when you talk about knowledgeable basketball, conversations, that's what, Coach Willis, Brad,
Gordon as well.
Great,
yep.
It's great listening to people that, know the game. We used to always talk about that the crowd, it was a rarity that the crowd actually knew, the momentum in the game and how a shift was or why we called the timeout or something like that. The key matchups, so listening to you guys, I can get adrenaline just, ready to watch the game.
How do you think? Listen, I was waiting for this for about, I would say, what's it now, 7:30? I was thinking about this for at least 24 hours. I was basically in my head, all I could think of was we got to talk basketball. I mean, I'll be honest.
Yeah, when you come to this time of year, 25, 26 games under their belt, teams know each other in the conference. It's a competitive time, and you really want to chill the back, then when he starts getting down to 4 teams, then it starts getting down to 2 teams, the championship game. That's when like, hey, this is a lot of fun. You talked about how CUNY is. I'm greatly disappointed on how CUNY was. How the results and the level of ball that's played out there right now.
That's very disappointing. I have to be honest. The play, and I know, Coach, you can't say anything here, and Brad, you can't say anything here, but the CUNY since COVID, it's like even before COVID, but the level of play, it's like
it's dropped off tremendously. The year that we went to the Final Four, Staten Island was number 1 in the country. For the whole year.
But I even go back to 2015 when Coach McAuliffe had those great plays with Exxon John Balaz, and there was Lorenzo Williams, and
Richie did a great job with that team. They had a lot of talent.
There were some good players on those teams, and even the other teams. You had Lehman, you had CCNY, you had Baruch is still good. I mean, CSI was always a powerhouse, but like now it's like, I don't want to say nothing.
And again, hopefully, they get some athletic directors together and they start making it key to, get.
It's become almost intramurals basketball. You remember when you played CYO, then there was intramurals. They've almost become intramurals basketball. I hate to say it. I mean, guys who are coaching.
I hate to say it too, but my CYO team could have been very competitive in CUNY this year.
I don't want to say the team I could think of, but there's at least 2 of them. Unfortunately, one of them is your alma mater that I would certainly throw on the list. On the men's side, not the women's side, but on the men's side,
the women's side and Alex Lang, man, they own CUNY's.
It's like Death Taxes and Alex Lang and the women's basketball team with like 19 wins or more. Seriously.
No, they're going to win 20 games. They'll win the CUNY championship again.
And they won a game last year in the tournament, by the way. We spoke about that last year in the show. They won a game in the tournament.
I think the thing about it is that I think they have 12 to 13 20-game seasons consecutive, except for COVID.
Yep.
So that they got a program there, but like you said, then when they go to the NCAAs, they kind of get bounced. But they won a game last year, so they were. Alex is a good coach, and he keeps his players play hard for him.
Yep.
They're smart and they play hard. So,
no, certainly. Yeah.
I don't have anything more to say. I don't want to. I enjoyed the conversation. It's really good talking knowledgeable basketball with people here, and go Eagles, I guess.
Listen, come on.
The people that like the Maccabees might be booing me at this point.
Well, he's a Brooklyn Bear, so he may have to plead the 5th. But I mean, listen, I don't think Brooklyn College. Well, actually, we were supposed to play each other, by the way, December the 30th, and they canceled the game for what reasons? I have no idea. You might have to ask the athletic director on that one. But I'm going to plead the 5th on that, to say the least. But obviously, yes, it is my hope that CUNY basketball gets a lot better. You are always welcome here, Danny. I can't wait to speak with you. Hopefully, maybe we'll have some more coverage later this week, hopefully Thursday. And thank you as always. And I want to go now to somebody that's always gotten closing thoughts. He knows the drill by now. We didn't certainly save the biggest for last, but we saved maybe one of his best for last when it comes to his thoughts on the Golden Eagles. That is the Brute Force Brad Weiss. And anything you want to share before we move on and get ready for tip-off? And you know the drill at this point, so fire away.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Thank you, Danny. Thank you, Alec. Good to have you back, my friend. You got to come on Friday night. We got to make sure I let you know about some of these takes I got on professional sports. All right, but
Well,
anyway,
we might have Thursday. We're hoping if we win, the plans, if we win tonight, we'll go on
listen,
Thursday.
Alec Willis, I know he's a Celtics fan, but watch out for my New York Knicks. We might have to talk
Now
about
you're saying that? You were last week saying, I don't know. All right. I'll let you go.
But anyway, listen, it's a pleasure being on with you guys. Obviously, Gordon, as a former Golden Eagle, it's awesome to see former Golden Eagles here on the show as well. So I thank you guys. Of course, you can follow me on Instagram at bweiss20. Also at Coach Brad Weiss, because I coach on the high school level now. So I'm there as well. But listen, I'm very excited for this game. I think our Golden Eagles are comfortable at the Max Stern Athletic Center. I think they're ready to go. They've had a nice week of prep, some momentum going on there, and I just think that they're going to be ready to play tonight. Listen, I got the Super Bowl right with my predictions, so I'm going to say with confidence, I'm going to say the Golden Eagles win 68-62. I think they're going to win. They're going to score. And you're going to see guys like Matt Hurd, McNeely, Gaudiello, really have a good game today. Tabata, obviously, I think is going to do well. And also, we haven't mentioned his name enough, Spencer Malloy. I think Spencer Malloy is going to have a good time down there in the post, and I think he's going to make things happen. So I'm really excited to see what happens tonight. But overall, I'm proud of my Golden Eagles. And now I got to say something else, because this goes right to Alec Willis. All right, we do also know that there's another Skyline Conference St. Joseph's team playing right now in the playoffs. And that is our Golden Eagles women's team facing the St. Joe's Brooklyn Bears at the Dancy Center. And currently our Golden Eagles are winning. So I am very excited, and I hope that stays the same, because there's not really much better than beating Brooklyn. And, I know I didn't get to do it enough. Dan, if you don't know, this man, Alec Willis, hit a game winner on me at the Dancy Center, all right, while I was playing. So this guy's devastated me, all right? But with that being said, hopefully our girls get the job done tonight at the Dancy Center. I'm rooting them on as well. And like we said earlier, Tom, hopefully we can get a win tonight. So this is not our last show, and certainly have another great show previewing our next game on Thursday, hopefully. But this was awesome. This was terrific. Great guests, great camaraderie, great flow. This was awesome. I hope we can do it again.
Absolutely. It's one of the more enjoyable ones I've done in 4 years. And by the way, to give Alec credit, 34-34 right now between the Bears and Golden Eagles. So we're tied on the women's end. So you can't. You spoke too soon, Bradley Weiss. You spoke too soon there. But obviously, all great stuff. And totally, we'll keep our fingers crossed. Everybody will be back with us Thursday. I want to now give you the floor here, Mr. Willis. Obviously, I want to give you the floor, some closing thoughts. Anything else you want to share, and anything else that you want to say here before tip-off? And hopefully we get you back on here more often and speak more about these games and some of Brad's so-so takes on the NBA. And floor is yours, and very happy to see you on the court coaching this year. I got to watch you guys quite a bit this year on the streams and saw you guys, and it was a pleasure, and hopefully just the beginning. And floor is yours, my friend.
I appreciate you guys having me. I appreciate being in such great company. Dan, I don't know you, but the conversation so far has been nothing short of just getting me amped up about college basketball in this postseason. even for these Division I matchups that are going to be coming soon. I can't wait for March is all I could say.
Yep. Amen.
I'm excited for the kids though. I will say this, having my sophomore year make that run in the Skyline tournament, only to fall short to Old Westbury in our championship. It's just a memory you're going to have, win or lose. It's just a great memory to be playing postseason basketball. And it's something that I'm going to hopefully use to inspire our guys over here in Brooklyn to just want to thrive for more and thrive for that feeling of postseason basketball, because we haven't had it in a while. And it's something we're going to keep striving for. We're going to keep working with the guys we have, bring in some talent, and just hopefully get back to a point that I remember as a player being there, playing against Brad and whatnot. But I'm happy for the kids. Postseason basketball is great. Basketball as a whole is great, but when you can play meaningful basketball in mid to late February, pushing into March. There's nothing like it. There really isn't. So thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Ball is life. That's the
Yes.
Alec Willis
Yes.
hashtag. It's his slogan. So make sure it's the slogan that everybody should know. And follow Alec Willis, the real Alec Willis. So you might want to see him out there on the court coaching for the Bears, the men's basketball program. You might see him selling some homes out here on Staten Island. The man does it all. Of course, his family very well ingrained in the Staten Island community. Of course, his father, his grandfather, just legends here. So please make sure you follow Coach Willis. Also, I want everybody to follow the Bears program, and certainly make sure you follow the Golden Eagles men's basketball team as well. We can do that here. It's SJBK_MB ball, SJLI_MBB on Instagram and Twitter. So make sure you follow both programs. Also, Danny Burns on Facebook as well. Give him a follow. So thank you, everybody here, for tuning in for our pregame coverage of our SJLI Golden Eagles men's basketball team, along with the rest of the Skyline Conference. And go enjoy the game if you're going to watch it. We hope to be back here a couple more times here, fingers crossed. And we were joined here by the brute force Brad Weiss, who Spencer Malloy passed, is now 26th all-time in school history and rebounds. Coach Alec Willis, assistant coach for our SJC Brooklyn Bears men's basketball team. And now the Brooklyn College Athletics Hall of Famer, Danny Burns, part of the only team that ever played in the Final Four from the CUNYAC. And my name is the Reverend Tom Bryce. Go enjoy the James, everyone. Thank you, everybody, here for tuning in on the number one global radio station that is Sports Wire Radio. Good night, everybody.
Thanks.